And we are. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3. It looks like you can, which is perfect. Uh, Thank everyone for joining me. After a little bit of an extended hiatus, we are back with the deep dive, the show for game masters by game masters, where we take the deep dives on some of our favorite systems. Today, I am super excited to do our kind of like our Halloween week episode. You know, Halloween ends Saturday, but the ghoulishness never stops on Gehenna, and nor does it stop on the deep dive, because you know I love my horror systems. But today, I have a super special guest, a man near and dear to my heart, Mr. Rick Wheeler. You might know him as the face one of the three of the High Council in Gehenna Gaming, but he's also the storyteller for Salem by Night and North Shore by Night, as well as the VP of Content Development and also a writer on the new stretch goal for the Red Opera Warlock Focus 5th edition campaign setting. Mr. Rick Wheeler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's funny, I think, a month or two ago, this was reversed. I was talking
Yeah,
to
you were interviewing me.
Right, so it's my turn to be put on the grill, and make sure you get me pink in the middle.
Well, we're all about serving up the rare and most rareness of interview shows. We're currently 2 for 2 on just feels and just good advice all around. So let's go ahead and make that a hat trick. First off, before we dive into all this, how have you been? You know, it's how do you feel about the Gehenna Gaming? We've been quite busy the past couple months.
We've been really busy. Just taking a quick moment. Are we doing well technical wise for the Twitch channel? Just making sure.
I think so. It looks like my readings are fine. Are you looking at the Twitch channel right now?
I am, and it looks like we were still hosting Atlanta.
Okay, it should be okay, because you might just need to refresh it. I would just exit out of the window and
Cool.
refresh the thing just in case.
No
Everyone
problem.
at home, can you hear me? Is everyone at home tonight? I almost said a tween. All right, Heartless
Oh, there we
Place.
go. Yep, I see you perfectly fine. So, okay, we're doing good. It was my eyes playing tricks on me,
As they often do.
as they always do, which is why I wear glasses. Hey, Mark in the chat and Heartless Plague, welcome to our deep dive. So yeah, Nick, take it away. You were asking me how things were going with Gehenna Gaming.
Yeah, how things going with Gehenna Gaming and just like yourself in general?
It's been good. You know, we just had the Save Against Fear Con, which was really, really great. We helped something like 10 grand, I think it was.
Yeah, that's insane.
I think they had an initial goal that was 5 times less than that, and this is their first time doing it virtual. It's been very successful event for them to network and find other people who are therapists. They use tabletop role-playing games as a means of therapy. So it's been great. It's helped increase their network, and it's great to always partner with people who want to do good for the community. And the fact that Bohana was mixing in tabletop, which is something we are very passionate about, we had a great time not only helping them, but building a better relationship with them as well.
It definitely seemed to be a what we would call just a perfect match of what we do and what we want to do. You know, Gehenna, we've done a lot of charity stuff in the past. We are doing another charity stream also in the future, which I'll talk about at the end of this episode a little bit more. But that's still about 2 hours and 50 minutes off. So let's not waste any more time. We're gonna get right into it. The game we're talking about today, a fan favorite, one of the most iconic of all horror game lines, and probably the biggest LARPing system as well, like just game line to LARP on the planet. Yes, we're talking about it. All the by nights, everything, the World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade. Specifically, we're talking about Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, the newest edition to come out. About a couple years ago. I want to say it was like 2007.
Yeah, almost 3, maybe even.
Yeah, 2017, 2018 it came out. And it's taken the world by storm. Everyone fucking loves this game. Oh, content warning for anyone out there, I curse. It just happens. I apologize. Rick curses sometimes. Actually,
Whoa, who was that bus? No, it's true, I do.
I honestly don't even. I can't even imagine the last time you cursed. To be honest, I guess it's because you got that dad level of just position.
We curse with the yeah. When you've got toddlers, you curse.
All right,
Try not to, but it happens.
I can. I can't fill those shoes just yet, but I'll hit you up in like 5 years and I'll tell you what I think.
Oh, geez, don't put a clock on it now.
Oh no, we're just gonna be saying that. So Rick, why don't you kind of give us a rundown and let's talk about Vampire the Masquerade. Can you give a brief summary for the people that might be tuning in, might have heard of Vampire, but don't really know what it's fully about?
Vampire. If I were to read the back of a Vampire the Masquerade book, and I'm here because I love Vampire the Masquerade, like legitimately love it as if it was like another child of mine. It's fantastic. I love everything about it. It's so much fun. Mage the Awakening. Hey, that's a good game too. That's probably Mark on the Gehenna Gaming Twitch right there. But no, Vampire is a game of personal and political horror where you play as an undead person who roams the night searching for blood. You have vampiric powers. You have people that you have to answer to. That, it's not just, hey, I can do whatever I want. In some cases it is, but like any system, like any world, there are consequences to actions. But Vampire is great for just about anyone, and I feel like it's very intuitive to get into because it's a dark reflection of our own world.
Mm-hmm.
I found that it was very easy to run at conventions for people who had never played it before, because it was literally like you wake up in a house, you have a cell phone, you have keys. If you had a gun, you have it on you, whatever. They're like, can I call my agent? Can I call my mom and dad? Sure, why not? Go for it. And they're surprised by that. The realism and how this world is literally the choices that you can think of, the science of our modern world. You can act upon those things. They exist. It's not like in a fantasy world, which they're awesome to roleplay in as well, especially for a level of escapism. You don't always know what to expect because it is so alien, it is so different. With Vampire being familiar, it can be kind of fun. It's like that Grand Theft Auto running around in sometimes a sandbox, depending on who your ST is. You can go crazy with it, or you can get as tuned and plugged into the way that the World of Darkness works as you want to. It's got such a variety of gameplay. I love everything about it.
And that love definitely shines through. That was an excellent rundown, and I really appreciate you actually taking the time to kind of explain that to us. But yeah, that's like a real thing. It's in Vampire, you kind of feel like you can do anything you want, but there's always strings attached to it, which is what I kind of like about the system. So, right. See that it's near and dear to your heart. I kind of want to jump into your personal relationship with Vampire the Masquerade. In terms of like experience, you're familiar. Are you familiar with any of the other systems, additions that are in the game?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I played around the time when Revives was out. It was before V20 when I first started, and going back and checking it all out, they each have something great about them. First edition had some issues with, like, if you read some of the old City source books, the NPCs are like God statted out. They're super powerful.
Oh yeah.
But there's still a great amount of material and inspiration to pull from. And you got the Tim Bradstreet art. It captured the Gothic art of its time. You're right. First was a little weird, but it was a good kind of weird, right? It was shockingly different.
Yeah.
I think Revised really had it out of the park, especially when you got people.
Oh, we have some technical difficulties. Rick, I'm losing you there. Can you hear me? Oh, Rick, I have lost you. Your connection has timed out, it seems, and you're frozen. Can anyone hear me? I'm still going.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. It looks like we just had some minor temporary lag. We didn't lose anything on the stream, which is good. Just probably the weather out there and the Philadelphia to New England connection. It's always kind of spotty anytime my connection goes up north, it seems. I apologize for that. Can you repeat that starting from the revised edition when you start talking about that?
Yeah, revised is great because we have people like Justin Achille who came on board, and he's fantastic. He's got a real depth of knowledge and passion about the game. He understands it so well, and it really shines through the books that he had worked on and guided the development of. I think other than that, V20 was wonderful as well because it kind of took everything that people loved and helped kind of compartmentalize it in a place that was more accessible and easy to find. You've got so many good books that came out, especially from Onyx Path, like Lore of the Clans, which is kind of like a need to have go-to book to get a little bit more out of the lore of the 13 clans and more. That there's only so much that those thin first edition and second edition or revised core books can give you. I feel like it definitely added a lot more meat, more substance to what people really like about this game, which was, it's not only just the political systems, but it's how these relationships work. There's so much bad blood between certain clans. You have high clan, low clan. You've got Tremere versus everybody because they don't play well with others, right? But it's great. And I think that dynamic of, it's like that tribal mentality in a way. It's like an us versus them. And I think V5 correctly made a threat that was long overdue. They've got the Second Inquisition, which is kind of like a threat to them all. Now you have clans that were on the fringe or part of the Sabbat kind of merging into the Camarilla. If you were to tell a kindred in, I don't know, the Dark Ages, that more like the 17th century, that the Lasombra, that were part of the Sabbat after the Council of Thorns, were going to be joining up with the Camarilla one day, they would scoff at you. They think you're insane. But even the Banu Hakim, these were Diablerists by most other kindred clan accounts. To see them merge and come together, especially with like what we've seen in Cult of the Blood Gods, where you've got the Giovanni, the Hekata, the Harbinger of Skulls, these people who literally try to hunt each other down for 600 years, suddenly breaking bread, or are they? Right? That's the story that you can tell. Those are the players and the characters that you get to work with. It's like being a kid in a candy store. I can't say enough about it.
That's a beautiful way to state it. I know I've commented on it before. It's just your love of the system is crazy. You elate it so much, and I really think it's going to be great. Just to kind of give a rundown, my personal relationship with Vampire. So, surprisingly enough, I played the original Vampire the Masquerade when I first got into the New World of Darkness, and then someone was like, "We should play this." So I wasn't actually a huge fan of the original Vampire, kind of what you were saying, where like you would just have these kind of godlike powers, and I never really felt like a vampire while playing the original system. I always kind of felt like a dark superhero of some sort, and which is kind of how I like to call that game. So I actually played a lot of Requiem for the longest time, and it's great to see how Masquerade has taken kind of the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
And made this like almost like higher end version, like it's the best it could possibly be. And I really do appreciate that because you can see the growth in the system itself. And Vampire's also near and dear to my heart because that was our first game we ever played together.
You're so romantic. No, it was, and it's the first game I play with a lot of people who have become some of my best friends. So, I mean, you can't get away from it. When you've got people in your life now that you've met through something that's special to you, it takes what you love about that hobby and just elevates it. I'd love to actually ask that question to a lot of the different people in our community and just kind of get their reactions of it, because I'm sure they probably have a similar perspective on it as well. As far as V5, I think you asked me before what if I could the summary about it. Other than the previous editions, like first revised, it seems like when I played those old editions, everyone wanted to be a really powerful character. Like you said, the first edition especially was like superhero, kind of thing. V5 is really clever about making it ground level.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're walking down a back alley and you're a kindred, but you still don't quite know what to expect. You still know that there are bigger fish in the sea than you. You may have moved up a level on the food chain, but there's still like an uncertainty. It's not like you're practically an antediluvian and you could kick everyone's ass. You could kick everyone's ass in that bar, right? Yeah, because you're a vampire. It's like Near Dark. You just walk in and you're bulldozing
Near Dark.
Whoever gets in your way, right? No, I like that V5 kind of takes it down a notch and lets you play and focus more on who you are, what you're going through, who the people you are in your life. I think bringing touchstones into it, which I think Ian had said was from Requiem, right? Tying yourself to your humanity via someone that you care about. Even the character creation system in V5, there's a generic version and then there's like a life you live kind of section.
I love that part.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you made this base character, what did you do for a job? Okay, well, you probably thought of that, but did you think about what kind of life experiences you may have had that were outside of your job? What were your hobbies with the money you earned? What did you do? It's like, those are questions I don't think a game book has ever really asked me before. I may make a warlock in D&D, but I don't often think about where he vacationed after he spent the loot that he earned. Those are great questions, especially in a game where it's a modern setting. It makes perfect sense. I kind of wrote a short thing that's fiction that I would probably use to describe someone's first experience playing BTM, if you want me to read.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, go ahead and let's see it here first, folks. Rick's gonna tell us a little bit more.
You woke up.
Did Rick, I think you might have cut out right when you said you woke up. Oh, wow, that was, I thought you were taking a dramatic pause.
Back?
Yeah, you cut out literally after you said you woke up, and I was like, waiting for it, and then you didn't say anything, and so I was like, dramatic. Oh, okay, so you woke up.
Am I good now?
You're great now.
Okay. You woke up, you met a friend, you went for a few beers. Day in, day out, you thought you were satisfied. Maybe things were looking up. Maybe you met a certain someone who caught your eye and they smiled back, exchanged phone numbers. The next time you met up, it was like magic. Your father, who's been ill, finally got approved for that kidney transplant surgery. And you made plans to be there when he went down and plans to be there when he woke up, kind of patching that rocky relationship you may have had. Your direct supervisor was promoted and she chose you to replace her. Things aren't perfect, but they're getting better. Until you unlocked the door that evening and found a stranger in your apartment. You may wake up several days later with bite marks all over your body. As you look at them, they begin to close. You're starving. Everything is hungry. You feel a very pulse in your eyes, your tongue, your body feels.
Oh, you cut out once more?
It's a
Let me see what's going on. Oh, you're back. Sorry about that. We might have to do just a little bit of start and stop, but it's fine. We'll get through it. That's why we do these. Continue.
Back again. Where'd I leave off? What was the last thing you heard?
The last thing I heard is there was a stranger in your room.
Okay. Let's see. There's a stranger in your apartment. You wake up. Days later, there's bite marks all over your body. When you look at them, they begin to close. You're starving. Everything is hunger. You feel your very pulse in your eyes, your tongue. Your body feels like a vacuum, pulling at anything to get what it wants. Something fresh and living. There's a knock at your door. It's your date from the other night who's checking up on you. You go to say run, but you say it, and looks like
apologize, everyone. We're having some technical difficulties with the internet here. But all right, it's weird. It'll cut out for like 10 seconds at a time. But,
yeah.
But something you know what, that it's weird. Like, we're gonna touch on it later. But you know that a lot of that, it's not exactly the same. But you know what it reminds me of? The Fatal Choices scenario that you wrote. Did you wrote Fatal Choices? Right? I'm not sure it was you or Mark. It's you.
It was me, and then Ian.
Oh, and Ian. I'm sorry.
Ian did me the kindness of going over it, adding some work to the NPCs, statting them out, editing, and some grammar, like he's usually very inclined to do and very good at. And then Mark made it extremely pretty. So kudos to them.
It really does remind me of like the beginning of Fatal Choices, which we're gonna talk to at the end of this series, whether it's a 1 or a 2-part or a 3-part. But I actually have heard this explanation before. You told it to me at the convention at PAX Unplugged before we started playing the scenario, and I think that's just the perfect way to kind of set up your transformation and just a player's kind of like expectations into vampire.
Yeah, I like to start them from a life lived into the nightmare that they're now going to live forever, right?
Some people would argue nightmare, and then some people would argue like it's a better life, which is weird.
It can be, and that's actually how your character handled it during the session we did, right?
Yes, I really love that.
Nick was a Nosferatu who was disgusted by the change he went through, and then came to live with it and even enjoy it.
Yeah, there was it's something I'll get into. Oh, and to answer one of the viewers' questions, my favorite clans actually is probably either Nosferatu or La Sombra. I really like this La Sombra, their lore behind it, but I always enjoy just being the more monstrous vampire. I will be asking Rick's favorite clan later on, so let's not drill him too much. But let's go ahead, now that we kind of have the background, now that you introduced us to vampire, let's go ahead and go into the section I like to call Before the First Bite.
All right.
So, to start, just for anyone watching at home that wants to run vampire, what in your mind are the core themes behind Vampire the Masquerade that often many games will try, that are set within that system, will try and explore? Are there any other themes in your head that Vampire excels at exploring that are kind of like been untouched by the masses?
Other than, I mean, it's always described as personal and political horror. Vampire is interesting because it can get into all kinds of different horror. It can get into religious horror, which is something that me and Ian love to do. We love to always have cults and things in some of our games. You know, people may have noticed, but we love that about, you know, you're now experiencing this new condition, and what do you do with it? You try and find people who are like yourselves before you go insane, right? You try to find someone with a shared common experience, and mankind throughout the history of history, they've often created systems of belief. So Kindred do the same. I think Cults of the Blood Gods is a fantastic new book for this edition that's been kind of long overdue for the line. We've always had, you know, the followers of Set, who are a clan of faith. Mm-hmm. Now they're the ministry. And, you know, we've always had Mithras and things like that as a character, but not so much as a cult. So I love that aspect of it. I love historical horror. You know, it's crazy. Vampire can kind of get its little fingers into so many different types of horror that it's really adept at telling a story.
It's got many tendrils, the beast that is the vampire, which probably is because of, you know, obviously the legend of a vampire goes back so long. It's something, even though, like, even if you can't get behind the concept of tabletop RPGs, you know what a vampire is. You know what it is, and you're like, well, think of a game where you're playing that beast, whether it be, you know, what version. And there's so many versions of it that we'll get into. So, kind of go into the next question.
Sure.
So I'm a GM, for example.
Yeah.
Why should I decide to pick vampire to tell my game? What's the criteria that I'm looking for that vampire is going to fulfill for me and excel at?
I think the personal investment that your players have is going to be unparalleled with Vampire compared to other games. There's something that is so familiar and just you're playing somewhat in the modern world, and you're going through very real situations. Um, I don't think there's too many other games that really can beat that. You have games that are set in the future, like Shadowrun, Cyberpunk. I think World of Darkness really takes us and meets us where we are. Right? It's instead of you going up the mountain to meet the great god or whatever, it's instead the god comes down to you and meets you in the plains. Right? It's meeting you in horror where you already are, where you're already at, where you already live, and what you're familiar with. And when you take something that's familiar and you turn it into something horrific, that's something you live with. You know, you drive down the street and if you're a storyteller and you're doing like a My City by Night, or let's say we were just hosting Atlanta by Night, those players in that game who may also live in Atlanta, after the game, they're gonna go about their lives, drive down the street, get lunch, whatever. They're still gonna be thinking about that game. It's gonna follow them. They're gonna drive by places that they may have visited in character, in someone else's shoes, and in a whole other mindset. And they're gonna think about those experiences. Or they might think of, hey, that building is really creepy, really cool. That'd be a great place to abduct my enemy and beat the crap out of them to find out who betrayed the prince. It's
just normal conversation.
Normal conversation happens every day. Keep your windows up when you're driving through this neighborhood and you're talking about these things out loud. But that's the kind of beauty of the My World by Night, the Chicago by Night, wherever you live. It's something you can take with you, and and when you have a really great horror story, it lives on because it's set in our world.
Who's to say it isn't happening?
Who's to say it isn't? Oh boy. Way to unsolved mysteries this one here, Nick. Cue the theme.
Yeah, so it's weird to kind of answer this next question. I'm just kind of a little bit through your points, but I'm just gonna go back and state it. So Vampire, we often know it's well known as a game about politics and getting a leg up in the world and underhanding and backhanding everyone because that's what you do. So while a political game is always fun, what do you think about a GM tying their vampire games into something more, action-oriented, survival horror, mystery genre, noir? You kind of talked about the tendril getting its place into certain types of other horror, but what about the actual structure of a genre of more that action, survival, noir, all that other stuff that's not political?
In your game, if it's a campaign, should try and feature as many different genres as you can to change it up for your players, to keep things fresh. That way things don't get stagnant. I would have maybe a couple sessions that are very political leaning, but then change it up. Have the players do a heist, right?
Yeah.
Someone has a fragment of the Book of Nod, and Nick, for instance, he is a Tremere who's obsessed. He's an honest. Perhaps he is a cultist in, what's it called? The Church of Cain. You got to have that piece. It's almost like, actually, they did this in LA by Night. The guy with the mutton chops breaks in, or he gets invited to the prince's. He gets invited to the prince's home. He sees the fragment. That guy walks out of there with that fucking thing, and we never see him on camera again. I don't believe. Maybe we do, but he certainly never brings it up. He's not like, oh, I'm borrowing this.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Garrick, and he steals the
Garrick,
book.
Yes. Oh yeah, he totally steals it. But a heist game would be fantastic. Vampires can be about politics, but it doesn't have to be. As storytellers, we often tailor the experiences that our players want, because our players are the stars. They're the main attraction. It's their game. We're playing it with them. And as a storyteller, you try to provide the best experience you can for these players. because you want them to love Vampire the way you do. If you love the game, you're going to make that happen anyway. And the political games, I think people like them because they're a challenge. When you've got a boss who cannot die because they're immortal, getting a raise is pretty impossible, right? So when you're trying to get a leg up on someone who's lived for centuries and they're better at this game than you, and you actually pull it off, whether you have help or not, it's a big win, man.
Feels good.
It feels fantastic. You just one-up someone who's hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
And they better be dead because they're going to be gunning for you. You bet. Or you may have, if you don't humiliate the shit out of them where they can't show their face in Elysium anymore, that's the next best thing. But that is such a great challenge to overcome. It's addicting. It's absolutely addicting to think outside the box using real world methods or strategies in a fictional game. There's something about Vampire where you kind of think about this in your off time when you're not playing, and at least I do. Maybe I'm just like the conniver archetype, right? Maybe that's why I write so many stories, but I'm always trying to weasel my way into getting past certain gatekeepers, fictional or non-fictional. But that for me is fun. Doesn't mean it's fun for everyone, but like you said, Vampire is great at adapting to different scenarios.
That was a lovely answer. Damn, Rick, you're just you're impressing me every step of the way here. And that actually leads so well into our next question too, because you talk about like thinking about it every day. Something that we often talk about, and it gets brought up a lot in Vampire. Vampire Masquerade, it's a pretty emotionally taxing game. It can be. Sometimes it's not, but it certainly can be, and it's a vessel for that. And eventually, what ends up happening with certain players, they talk about the bleed effect, which we talk about in-game emotions bleeding into a player's actual emotions and affecting their mental state. Sometimes it's positive and it provides that more experience, but sometimes I've seen some people need to take a step back from a character or from the game because it's getting too much. And why does that tend to happen more with Vampire than it does other systems? You never talk about people in D&D suffering the bleed effect.
I mean, it's not to say that they don't, but it's certainly not as common. And you're right. It's something that especially happens with LARP more than anything. But if you have a really active and imaginary theater of the mind tabletop group, it's something that can be very real and be very persistent in your games. Before I get too much more into bleed, Big Dad mentioned survival horror. Survival horror is perfectly reasonable in Vampire. You could have, you're asleep during the entire day. I mean, that could be up to 16 hours. That gives people the chance to hunt you down and kill you while you sleep. Every night's kind of like survival horror, really. If you're not completely sure where you're sleeping, you're risking everything, right? But with bleed, as you're playing monsters, but at your core, you're just playing a person who became one. It doesn't mean you are. People feel and experience the trials and tribulations of things that feel familiar, and you deeply care about your character. Oftentimes you really care about some of the NPCs. If you have a storyteller who's great at portraying different people and expressing a real persona that they're putting out in the world and connecting with your character on a level that maybe sometimes you don't even get in your own life.
Yeah.
Sometimes people who play role-playing games, they can be lonely just like anyone else. And vampires are static creatures. They don't change, but at the same time, like us, they don't want things to change either. They've got a good thing, they want to keep it. And they have a primal beast inside of them that wants to make sure they keep it. And when they lose it, especially when it's another player who is doing things that might benefit them, and they know it's going to hurt you, it's not going to kill you, but it's definitely going to set you back, it might piss you off. You feel that because you feel that character. People who get really emotionally invested and tuned into their character, almost like method acting, they feel it as if it's a real thing, right? And I think the other day I posted something, it might have been by Neil Gaiman, and it was like, fiction is a bunch of lies that tell us real world truths over and over again. And I think when we role play these games, it is fiction, but somewhere in our heads, these are real lived experiences. These are choices we're making, albeit through the fictional shoes of somebody else. When things don't go your way, even in this scenario, you can feel it. You can feel it like it's a loss or a betrayal. And when you do feel it, maybe that is the testament that this game is great at telling personal horror, or it could be that you are a very empathic person. But either way, it's a way to emulate these scenarios, and ultimately you gain empathy. You understand where other people are coming from, because you might be role-playing with someone that's completely different than you, and you would never have thought about things in that way before, but now you are. I think it's much like traveling and reading the book. It can open your mind to cultures, experiences, different worlds, different people, and that just makes living in the world we do live in easier.
It's really interesting that you say that, because often people will talk about, vampire, and like, and the core mechanic here, the idea of Vampire the Masquerade is you're playing a person that's been turned into this monster, and you're trying to keep in touch with your humanity. You're trying to keep yourself empathetic to the people that you now see as food. And it's interesting for a game about losing that empathy that causes us to empathize with other people's point of view.
Absolutely.
So much more often.
And I've always said that the person who is trying to be good is someone who's really strong, because just being a douche is really easy.
It's
the default mode when you don't give a crap. Being kind to people can be very hard, especially when they're difficult, right? And it's kind of like in real life, we're living as people who have the great potential to be monsters every day. And when you're playing a fictional game where you're playing as a monster who doesn't want to be one, it's almost like you're emulating how to try and be a good person, even though you yourself might not be. But in the end, playing a game like this, maybe it'll make you one. Maybe it'll open your eyes up if you're not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
I would really love to see the statistics between like people, like maybe, I guess you just often don't think as Vampire the Masquerade as a game that could be therapy, but it sounds like it really should be considered one.
Let's bring on the Bohana group.
We really should. That honestly, that's a whole discussion for people much more qualified than I am, but I would still love to sit down and we had a great panel at SafeCon involving, you, Ian, Mark, and Brand, and people that haven't seen that should definitely go check it out. Like, holy shit.
It might be a podcast soon, so
I think it, so maybe sit tight until that comes out, but definitely give it a listen or watch, whatever it is, when it comes out.
So yeah, we should get Jack on for an interview, because he's such a good guy. So
yeah, Jack's good to us, and we appreciate that. Thanks, Jack. Shout you out. All right. So we spent such a good point on Bleed. Let's get some more technical questions just for this one. Let's talk about the book itself. You have this core rulebook, Vampire the Masquerade Edition. Unfortunately, I don't actually have the physical rulebook with me. I only have a PDF of that because, I'm a poor boy, and I need to get a PDF. That's why you should donate to the deep dive. Let me get some money here.
You have a physical yet?
I don't have a physical yet. I want to. I legit almost bought the 3-set one that it all came in. But I'm very frugal. So at one point,
Christmas is coming.
Oh shoot! It dropped to like $80, and then it shot back up to 110, and it never dropped back down when I had the money.
110. My God.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not gonna buy it. I'm not gonna buy these 3 books unless it's that price that I originally saw it at. So I'm not only am frugal, I'm stubborn as hell. But yeah, I should just pick up the core rulebook eventually. Because I heard like you don't necessarily need the Anarcha Maria book. That's actually a question we're gonna get into later. So I'm not gonna say too much about it. But it's something. Yeah, spoiler alert. But just the core rulebook and the look of the layout of the book in general. How do you feel about it? Do you feel that they did a good job in designing it? Do you feel like there's some things that are more easier or some things more difficult from other rulebooks you've seen?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect core rulebook to start. Although a lot of the ones by Free League are really great, which is funny because
I was just about to say that.
I think Free League actually did. I know they had a hand in the Camarilla and Anarch. I need to check to see if they had a hand in the core. Right?
Oh, really? They help publish it? They like help Modifius them?
Yes, they did. The core rulebook for V5, I've spent a lot of time with it. Practically every day for several years. The Alien core book is great. Yes, I have it. It's truly strikingly beautiful. When you go from reading all the other vampire books outside of V20, because V20 Onyx Path really did fantastic with the artwork. They brought in some great people. A lot of it is not just drawings, but they did a lot of photography work and things like that, and it brings an interesting realism to the genre in the book. V5, they had a lot of art assets from the MMORPG that never launched, and they used them, and they took it into a very realistic, almost like fashionable leap forward. I think there's actually, and I've heard Jason Carl talk about it before, there's a picture in there, I think it's in the Gangrel section, of a bunch of people, there's silhouettes moving on a mountain, and in the backdrop is like the stars of the Milky Way, and they're just kindred wandering in the wilderness. There's just images like that, or like Forenza, the old Venture woman, who's got like a young guy on a leash. There's just some strikingly powerful and interesting images in that book. The color palette of the whole thing is gorgeous. So from an art aspect, it takes your breath away. It's not what you expect when you open any tabletop role-playing game book. I think the layout for someone who's new to it is good. It gets into some of the meta, the storylines, the clans, and then it jumps immediately into character creation, which I do like, because a lot of games kind of, I've seen it kind of half and half, where they put character creation like 3/4 of the way through the book, right? Where if I really enjoy the first quarter, I want to make a character fast because I'm already hooked, right? I bought this thing, I probably like it, but once you get into the meta and you realize your love for the game, I want to make a character like yesterday. I want to make 5 characters. Hell, I might even run a game. But as a storyteller, there are some things that they could have referenced down the line in the more complex rules for the like advanced systems that are not as easy to find. But you know, that's where the PDF really comes in handy, and the community has really in the areas that they had forgot to do those things in, the community stepped up and made some great charts. We've got a guy on our Discord named Kendred who made amazing, actually I've got them, they're taped up. Let me see if I can pull one down.
Oh, he's gone.
There
you go.
He made, well, I don't know if we'll be able to see it. He made some fantastic charts. These are like feeding compulsions and things like that.
Were you giving these out at the PAX Unplugged last year, or are these like news?
Well, I might have. You know, I had a couple extra printed up, and people that were really diehard about the scenario and wanted to get into it, I gave some away because I wanted to. I can always print up more, or I would email them some of those resources that our community made, because whatever helps people tell a good story and makes their storytelling mechanic wise easier for them, I do like. But yeah, as Ravno said in the chat, we use them at cons. Kendred made them. He's magic. we appreciate the hell out of him.
Kendred is awesome. They are amazing. I know I think they're on a break right now from doing stuff, but they're going to be releasing some free resources, they actually said on their Twitter. And eventually, hopefully, maybe when the Vamp V5 hits the Storyteller Vault, they will be releasing Philly by Night.
Yeah,
which is awesome because I'm from Philly. That's what we're filming right now.
Yeah,
it's great. But yeah,
definitely follow them on our Discord and on Twitter. I know they're working really hard on that Philly, and the
Yeah.
updates I see and the progress. I need to talk to them more. I'm really proud of them, and
Oh no,
I'm
they're
very excited
awesome.
for it because I'm someone that loves to write vampire myself. So seeing someone take that same level of passion is really it makes me very very happy.
I just posted Kindred's Twitter. For the people
Oh,
that are
sweet.
watching this on the talkback, you can follow Kindred. You can follow them at Ken 93449136.
Yep.
Kindred buddy,
So
you gotta
yeah.
change that handle. Make it just a little bit easier for me to plug. But I did it for you because we love you.
That's commitment right there.
All right. I feel like I say all right a lot, but
Oh, sorry.
so so the last question before first bite, the last question of the section, which is surprising. Oh my god, we're almost down to the first page and it hasn't even been an hour yet. Will this actually be a one-parter? This huge game? Will we actually get through it? I don't know. I'm gonna stop babbling. But before
I say a lot, but I talk fast, right?
you do, but it's great and I understand everything. So we're gonna imagine another stare again. I'm a GM. My players are like, we want to play Vampire the Masquerade. Before we even sit down to do session 0 in character creation, what do I need to tell the players so that they're ready for this game? Just like not even about the campaign, but the game in general. Like, what do I need to like be upfront about these players and be like, hey, this is what you got to understand before we play Vampire.
First and foremost, before you start any game, consent mechanics. We had them at every con we do. We hand out a sheet. Let me know what you want in this game, what you don't want in this game. I need to know your comfort level. That way we can all cultivate a good collaborative storytelling experience. After that, I need to know what you want out of the game. I need to ask each player, like, what is it you like about role-playing games? Are you looking for something action, politics, romance, intrigue, horror, survival, impersonal horror? Or are you just good with anything, I do plan a lot and I write a lot of stories, but ultimately when I run a scenario and players are in front of me, anything can change because I'm trying to make sure that they have fun. So I can always use what I wrote another time because people are always looking for people to run games. That's the beauty of it, right? It'll never go to waste. I'll use it again. It's not a problem. I need to have the people in front of me having the best time. So understanding as a storyteller what people like about role-playing and what they want to get out of the game is the most important thing to me.
It's that's such an empathy. Like, it goes back to that empathy point. If everyone else is having fun, you're gonna be having fun. For real. That's the jam code. All right, I think that wasn't the answer I expected. Not gonna lie, but I think that's perfect. The whole comfort level.
What did you expect?
I guess I expect you to be like, well, before we play Vampire, you understand. Characters aren't like, you can't be Vampire, but you can't be go swinging stuff around, because you're gonna get put down.
You can totally swing stuff around and I'll let you, but the world's gonna bite back, dude.
But yeah, definitely talking like mentioning safety tools, the consent forms, the X card. That's super important. I feel like we're gonna touch on that in every episode I do on this. But certainly for Vampire, it's a big thing, and I get it. And when you have people who tell you, they're like, hey, straight up, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is what I'm not, you feel more freeing. And I do appreciate the safety tools for that, because not only do they help you from making a boo-boo, they kind of give you some peace of mind. Not that, because then as long as you're staying within the constraints, you can pretty much do anything you want. And
yeah,
that's awesome.
I definitely have a few players that I always invite to certain games or just to play with them and have a good time. Big Dad is in the chat. He's definitely one of them where I know the sky's kind of the limit with him. I can truly write something for a character of his that would be horrific, and he would eat it up with a spoon. He'd probably give me a timeout and like clap and have a great time. Regular size mom is very much the same way. They are fantastic role players. So, yes, we've got a lot of people in our community that are like that. However, if you have a player that does fill out a consent form, and there are a lot of yellows or reds on it, that's great. Don't think of that as a hurdle. Think of it as an opportunity to make yourself a better storyteller. Because if you, especially at a con, if you have to adjust on the fly what you're doing to make sure someone has a good time, that's just going to make you sharper. It's going to make you more spontaneous, creative. You might even run that scenario better than you ever had. It's one of those things where it's easy to think about it negatively and be like, oh crap, I need to really fix this on the fly. I don't know how I'm going to run this in that scene without these things that this player is just not comfortable with. And it's okay to take 10 minutes and be like, I need to take 10 before we start this so I can think about a couple things. You don't even have to mention, don't be like, this guy over here put an X on 5 things and it pisses me off. Don't do that. Keep it private. Be like, okay, everyone passed in their things. I'm going to review them, take a few minutes, and then we'll begin. Simple as that.
That's beautiful.
People don't want to be called out for things that they're not comfortable with. It's inappropriate. But as a storyteller, you wrote what you did. You got that far. Believe in yourself that you have what it takes to be able to change things creatively. I mean, you wouldn't be doing it in the first place if you couldn't. So just try and remember that. See it in a positive light as an opportunity to be creative once again. Even though you may be in a little bit of a time crunch, that person's fun and entertainment at the table is paramount to whatever pride point you might have.
I think that actually reminds me of a story, and if you don't mind, I'm actually going to tell a little anecdote right here.
Please do.
When I was running for SafeCon, we were running Little Fears. I sent out the consent forms about week. I got the consent forms back. Okay, I got the consent forms actually a few days. I didn't actually read them until the day of, because I was like, all right, let me just double check as I'm scrolling through and make sure none of my people have any problem with all the stuff I was going to run, because I kind of give them the rundown. I was like, all right, just need a good checklist, because I usually try to make a little checklist of stuff to avoid. So I go through, and Little Fears is a game about children, and I told them that the game was going to get very, like, it was going to be not like a kid friendly version, like it had kids in it, but it wasn't going to be kid friendly. So more of like your newer It shows, like It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, and then versus like, not, Kirby and Dreamland, kind of like kid stuff. And someone said, they put a red on harm to children, and I remember sitting there and being like, well, they're kids. I'm gonna have to they're gonna get hurt. They might get hurt. And I was sitting there. I was like, how am I gonna run this?
Yeah.
And I ended up having to sit down with the player. I was like, hey, you mind? And it's always good to have a conversation with the player beforehand, because you'd rather have that conversation than just guess. And we had a really awesome conversation, and they clarified for me what they meant by that. And all of a sudden I was relieved. They were like, no, what I mean is, as long as it has a purpose and it's not done for shock value. And it was just really awesome conversation that we had. And at the end of it, I felt a lot better about running the game in general, if someone hadn't marked it. And it really it really made me think, and everyone had great fun in that game. So I was super thankful for that. I'm not going to say who it was, that game that gave me that back, but protect their privacy. But definitely thank you for that, because that was an awesome conversation we had.
It's always a learning experience, So
yeah,
good.
and we can't all be like Big Dad, who puts Siberian film in his rating.
Serbian film.
Serbian film. I'm dumb. Siberian film. That's the sequel. A Siberian film. It's just a dude freezing to death over the course of 2 hours.
There's a white husky running through an Arctic snowscape. He's hardly visible.
I actually think in the Kult game we ran for SafeCon, I was like, on the consent form, I think I was like, Mark, just fuck me up. And he was, and lo and behold, he
Mark
fucked me up.
does, Mark does not disappoint.
Yeah, I love that.
He's so funny.
So, we've talked about session 0.
Mm-hmm.
Or what do you discuss before session 0? Now we're getting into the big meaty part of it. We're going to continue to talk about 30 minutes more before we take our first break at the halfway point of the show.
Sure.
So let's get into it. I'm guessing this is going to be the point that takes up most of our time. So, Vampire is known for all the fiction and the media around it. You have LA by night, you have Chicago by night, you have Atlanta by night. By the way, from anyone at home that doesn't know why it's called by night, just all the Vampire games and World of Darkness games generally have the whatever city they're in by night. And I don't know if LA by night started that. I think it was the Chicago by night source book was the one that started it. And then they made the show LA by night, and then everyone just kind of went with it.
Well, LA by Night was also a book, so.
Was it a book? Okay, I wasn't aware.
First editions, I think it's pretty hard to find, and they mixed it, like they had like a 2-part, 2-in-1 kind of book at one point, where it was LA by Night, and like maybe like the Anarch cookbook or something like that you could buy. But
Anarch cookbook.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's an awesome name. I didn't even think about that. So you have all these by nights, and like you have Atlanta by night, and you have like Orange. What is it? Long Beach by night. Yeah, Orange County by night, and Long Beach by night, and Salem by night, and North Shore by night, and Philly by night. Milwaukee by night was the first one. Yeah, I actually do remember that book.
Cool.
And Birmingham by night, also known as Iron City by night, hosted by our good friend Brother Wes, which you should check out because the first episode is currently out, and by the time this gets on YouTube, it'll probably be another 2 episodes out.
Sweet.
But you have all this fiction around it, and everyone in Vampire knows about the more intricate meta plot that kind of belongs in the game that people love. That's like a huge thing for them, and it's been furthered by official canon, whether you're talking about LA by Night, by Bloodlines, by all the other connected series. As a GM, that can feel a little bit overwhelming, but really, like, how important is it to you, and furthermore your players, to sort of know a little bit about this? Like, should I be assigning watch material and homework to my players? Is it better for me just to throw this out entirely? Like, how do I handle that?
Get to know your players. If it's everyone's first time, and especially if they're people you know. There's some people who you know, if you have someone who reads a lot, or they're very creative, I would say just get right into the game and have them experience it and visualize what things are like for themselves. If you have someone who is very much into film or movies or video games, I would maybe have them start with one of these different pieces of media, like I think Coteries of New York, even though it's not everyone's cup of tea because it's very much like a choose your own adventure.
It's a visual novel kind of deal.
It's like a visual novel more than it is an actual video game. And the replayability on it, it's kind of hit or miss. So it depends on if you like that a lot. But I think first playthrough, maybe even second playthrough, it's great for telling a story about someone who just got embraced, and it explains the concept of the world of darkness, the things in it, the politics, and the setting, the soundtrack and visuals with this game, and even the plot as you get towards the end, and like some of the gotchas are extremely on point for the world of darkness and Vampire especially. So I can't recommend that enough as a starting point. Bloodlines 1, it's good, maybe a little dated, but my god, is it fun.
We actually had Ian playing it. I feel like a few months ago we played through the whole thing on stream.
Yeah, I played through it for the first time right about when he did as well, as the Malkavian character, and I absolutely loved the shit out of it. It was great. Do I think the meta plot and like knowing the canon is necessary for a player? No. If it's something that they're really into, include it. If they have no idea that it exists, use your own characters. If you're not making your own city or setting and you want to use something like a supplement, like one of the by night books, great, use that, because whoever you put in your game, those are going to be the people that are up on a pillar, that are awesome, that are cool, that your players look up to. They're not going to know that Lucita or Nelly G or B. Dave Walters' Ventru exist.
You get old Victor Temple.
Yeah, those are great characters. And, including them, maybe like one of them heads on a plane to visit your city, do a cameo. That's fun too. If it fits in the narrative and your players want it, go for it. Sky's the limit. But I don't want new storytellers to feel weighed down by the chains of metaplot. I think some of the best stories you can create can be completely separate from anything that's been done in Vampire before. I think there was an interview with Matthew Dawkins, who's one of the writers for V5, and one of like the real leads for a lot of the books that have come out. He's a brilliant guy. We've interviewed him. He's a friend of ours, really. He's got a good outlook on the whole thing, where I believe he talked about, the way that the prince is set up with, and Justin Achille talked about this too, the way that each city has a prince and a seneschal and harpies and primogen. That wasn't supposed to be a cookie cutter. It's in every city. There are cities out there that might have a completely different setup that do it completely differently. They might still be Camarilla and have a different political structure. There's nothing that says there has to be X, Y, and Z in all these cities. So do it your way. Make it interesting, make it fun. You don't have to rely on something standard. That being said, that kind of structure can really help someone hit the ground running. So you got to know your style. Maybe play with each. If you're thinking about running a story in your city by night, use what you know. Try it both ways. Try one that you're importing NPCs from one setting, and try making your own characters. Maybe have a friend who you can play test this out with and see how it works. A lot of storytelling is just kind of like finding your style. While LA by Night is fantastic, those are all professionals. They're all professional people who role play.
Yeah.
That a lot of them are actors or voice actors. And then you have Jason Carl, who is magnificent. He's a fantastic storyteller. Not only as a writer, but as someone who presents a story, and the way he has subtle nuances with his characters. He's a great showman. He's interesting to watch. And they're all very likable. And for someone that's brand new to this, especially if they're brand new to the hobby, if they've never really played a role-playing game before, I wouldn't want them to feel like, well, I can't reach that bar. It's kind of like, I think people call it the Matthew Mercer effect.
Yeah, because Critical Role does that a lot. And
right. And that's, and no one faults Matthew Mercer for being fantastic. He's fantastic. But if you got a new playing group, new people role playing, take it slow. Let them find who they are as role players and who you are as a storyteller, and don't be weighed down by meta plot. If you can find a way to enrich your games with all of these things, absolutely do it. I think people say like, oh, I just watched The Italian Job or Chinatown or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Good movies.
That movie was fantastic, and I want to run a game set in a mental hospital where, 3 people are kindred, but maybe they don't know it. And the guy who is the head of the psycho ward is actually a ghoul, and he knows they're kindred, but the rest of the patients don't. And how is that going to work? Are they going to find out that each other are kindred? I mean, I just pulled that out of my hat, but that could
be a pretty good concept, actually.
Yeah, that could be a fun scenario. And one shots are good for kind of testing the waters and seeing what you like. So, but don't be afraid to pull from things that you really enjoy. I'm going to take Ian Muller and throw him under the goddamn bus because he's my buddy. He loves Call of Cthulhu. He is a huge Call of Cthulhu fan. He ran a game for us that was Providence by Night. And the good part of the way through it, we're maybe like session 5, we were like, this is very like H.P. Lovecraft. He's like, yeah, I'm basically running a vampire version of Call of Cthulhu because I love Call of Cthulhu, and I can't get people to play it, so I'm running Call of Cthulhu and Vampire. And we're like, that's totally cool because we're having a great time, you know. But that's great. If you love a different system like Changeling the Lost, and even though it's not part of World of Darkness, it's Chronicles. Who the fuck cares? Import it, use it, have fun.
Oh yeah, I've been telling my friends all the time because they really like Helping Night. I was like, oh, like I really wanted to run a Hunter Hunter the Vigil. Is that the Chronicles? Yeah, that's the Chronicles version. Hunter the Vigil in the vampire universe, and be like, well, now you're the Second Inquisition. You're hunting down, and we're going to LA, and you're the one shooting bullets at Victor Temple. You're the one trying to hunt down Annabelle, leader of the revolution, you know, and it's fucking rad.
I was going over a project I'm working on with Marchosius yesterday, and I'm like, okay, well, here's like I talked to you earlier. I take situations with mortals, and I just have like a news bulletin blast thing, just to kind of show that things are happening in the city during the day. And one of them was very much like something you'd read out of Kult, and it was completely fucked up. And it had nothing to do with the World of Darkness, but it was supernatural and creepy and weird, and it didn't have any explanation. He's like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, nothing on the World of Darkness. Then why is it there? Because it's awesome. You know, you're telling a story. You can do whatever you want. Keep that in mind. Have fun.
It's interesting and maybe frightening for the kindred. I'm gonna mix up saying vampire and kindred a lot because they are called kindred in the game. They don't like to refer to themselves as vampires, but
they don't hurt their feelings.
Yeah, it's that the kindred are often, they see themselves as the most terrible thing in the world, but like the idea that some normal mortals could be even more terrible than them. It's just,
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if anyone's. My lights just flickered, so if I suddenly drop the stream, who knows? Okay, we should be good now.
It's because you called them vampires.
I did. I said vampires, and all of a sudden we're in this big fucking mess.
There's some Ventru somewhere saying "cut his power."
Russian cut his power, and then cut his spine.
All right. To a medium style.
So it's these next few questions. You've kind of answered a few of them, but we'll get into it. So. Cool. Kind of leapfrogging off of the idea of creating your own city, you know, West. Oh man, I have to ask Wes how he did that because Wes just did this with Iron City by Night, and we had an interview with Meredith and Mike, the two of the creators on Chicago by Night on stream. Was it for? No, it's for VHC. It wasn't even Oxpath. It was for VHC way back in last April, beginning of April.
Yeah.
And they talked. We all talked about, like, you know, how Chicago by Night, the new one, is really.
I moderated that.
Yeah, I believe you did. Was great for, you know, creating your own setting. It was an awesome. Kendrick is here. Oh my God! I'm sorry for people viewing it on this YouTube replay. Kendrick has stepped into the chat. We have been talking about Kendrick a lot. They're awesome. You should follow them. Kendrick, we already plugged your Twitter. Feel free to plug your Twitter even more, and whatever, and feel free to send me Philly by Night. I know you sent me some stuff. I read it. I thought it was rad. I realized I never got back to you, but like a week had already passed, so I felt like it was really bad to just come back then. So I was like, I'm just gonna ignore it and hope that we both forget about it because I'm embarrassed. And yeah, and that's how I skipped out on Rhett for a few months before. I'm joking. But yeah, getting back into it. So, you know, Chicago might not really have this really good framework for building your own city. But what if you don't want to, you know, go through all the work to build a 300-page book of a city for a single game you're running? So if a player wants to run in a city of their choosing, whether it be their own hometown or something else, what level of detail should they have bare minimum planned out before their first session? And can you name some specifics?
Yeah, I mean, I did it as well. I'm working on a project with the city kind of source book, having fun with that. So a little bit of experience about it. And as I talked about earlier, Kendrick's been doing it, and I love hearing about their experience with that as well. You know, city source books are fantastic. I like reading through different city books. It's kind of like, it was a passion of mine for a while, where I was learning how they were formatted, how they talked about different kindred, and just seeing how like the NPC process is kind of like made, and just seeing different examples. Chicago by Night was fantastic because, like we talked about with Mike Tomasek and Meredith, they kind of laid out the groundwork for how you can make things like district by district and things. It's very cool, like guide, right? But as far as making your own, you gotta realize why you're picking the place you are. There's so many places to choose from, and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the big metropolitan areas that you can run stories out of, there's so many people in the community that are making vampire content that a lot of the cities are already taken. You know, and for a while, like, a lot of people seem to like hesitate and be like, well, I don't want to do the same thing they're doing, and I'm out of places that'll actually hold enough kindred for a story I want to tell. You know, the old I can only have 10,000 people per kindred, or 100,000 people per kindred. So now, you know, I guess Fort Worth, Texas is out of the picture. Don't worry about it, just tell a story. No one's gonna give a crap. It's something that, realism wise, I was like, I don't want to do that. Yeah, just fudge it. You know, it's funny because I was like, I really want to do Salem, Mass, but shit, there's only like 20,000 people who live there. Everyone's gonna starve, I guess. But no, I ended up taking like a larger chunk of land and being like, this is where I'm telling the story. So, you know, just tell the story you want to do, but find out why you want to run it there. Is it more than just scenery? Have you been there? Do you love it? What do you like about it? What do the people that live there think about it? You know, get into some of the history, try and pull as much of that as you can. Chicago by Night was great because you know, it's funny, I think I learned more about Chicago reading that book than I had watching movies and documentaries and all kinds of things. I got into parts of the history and the attitude and pride that the people of Chicago have in a way that I can't think I've seen in any other source of media, whether it was a historical book or not. And that's a credit to having the people that live there write the book. So find out why you're running the place you're doing, and, you know, get to know your NPCs really well. I know Kendra in the chat, I think earlier today, you said you had like something like 60 plus characters in your book, which is fantastic. If you're making your own characters, you don't even necessarily have to have a lot of story prepped. If you know your characters really well and their ambitions, their desires, who they mesh with, who they don't mesh with, some of the secrets that they have behind them, think about all these things, story will naturally flow from them. And I think by having enough of these kind of assets in your brain and like personalities and people to work from, you can, if you have that, it doesn't matter where your city is. You have enough character ideas that you can sit down and, at least I feel like I could spontaneously have Nick hand me a player character sheet right now, and I could do a one-shot with him and just populate people that I've used in games, maybe give them different names, different clans. It doesn't matter. There's enough variable where we could tell a story that would be impactful to you and have a good time. That's what you're trying to do. So read source books to try and get the layout, see what they did that you like, throw away what you didn't like. You don't have to use it. But make it your own. It's the most important thing. You know, some people get a little hung up with, well, there's so many vampire storytellers, and they're all great. But one thing we don't have is another storyteller that is you, who's putting their own perspective on how to tell a story. And you know what? People like me want to play more, so I'm going to say whatever I can to get in your game. So go ahead, do it. If you're looking for advice, there's great communities out there. There's Gehenna Gaming, there's people like Near Dark, Bowling Green by Night, Birmingham. There's so many great people in this community that will be absolutely open to hearing anything you got to say, giving you good feedback, and sharing the love and the passion of telling a good story with you.
Yeah, as someone Someone said in the chat, it's your world of darkness.
It is. And don't forget that.
Damn, that is that a tagline for any of the books? It's your world of darkness, or like that should be.
Not yet, but you should submit your resume while you can.
You know what? Someone get Jason, get Matthew, Doc, get Dixie on the line.
God damn it!
It's your world of darkness. It's your Chronicle of Dark. Oh my god, it works for everything. What fucking gold mine?
Yep.
Have it your wad.
Steal it.
That just doesn't sound right. Have it your wad. So this will be an interesting question. I'm sure this will take.
They've all been interesting.
Yes. All right. This is a big. I'm gonna ask you the question, and we'll probably take the break after this.
Cool.
So, Vampire the Masquerade is known for having 3 sects: the Anarch, the Camarilla, and the Sabbat. I've counted the Sabbat on the other hand because they haven't been formally introduced in a source book yet, and which I'll run how to gameplay them, but I'm sure in the future that will be a thing. What are the differences from running an Anarch group, a Camarilla group, and a Sabbat group? And can you give us a rundown of these sects for someone who might just not know, might be the uninformed?
Sure. Anarch games, and what's funny is, well, yeah, there's the Ashira too. There's actually in the Hekata. They're technically like their own sect. What's interesting is everything I'm about to say, you could turn on its head and have a Camarilla game fill in those shoes. You can do what you want. But Anarch games are traditionally survival-like. You're the underdog, and the kindred tend to look out for each other a little more. And you get that when you play Bloodlines 1 a lot. When you meet Nines, you actually meet Nines because, spoiler alert, a little bit, he helps you. He goes out of his way as a complete stranger and helps save your ass. And actually, the first other kindred you meet after being spared by the prince is an Anarch who's trying to help you. Because they need all the help they can get, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a much more team-based, almost like you're a family kind of thing, which I don't think I ever really thought about before. I always kind of like, Anarchs, kind of like Sabbat Light, right? Yeah. I never really gave it much the time of day, but I think LA by Night really changed the way I feel about the Anarchs, as well as the new Vampire the Masquerade comic book, which is so damn good. They're on 3 issues now. I recommend reading it.
Let's take a look at that.
Yeah. I've been buying copies for my Gehenna Gaming people because they can't get to the store.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just buy a whole bunch more and mail them out to people.
That would be great. And I remember you told me specifically about it because I actually listening to my audiobook on Audible. They released like the 10 short stories or whatever for Vampire the Masquerade. And I think they got Erika Ishii. She's reading all of them. She plays all the different characters.
She's doing great too as far as stuff. Yeah. Differentiating. I liked it. Camarilla, it's what you think of it as being like, if you're an ongoing player who's played it, you're like, oh, that's kind of like traditional VTM, and it very much is. The Camarilla, though, in V5, they've kind of closed their doors. They are an Illuminati, elitist oligarchy that run the world, and they're immortal. It's hard. It's high society.
Much like reality.
Yeah, much like reality. Yeah, not too hard to imagine this one. But a lot of people say, well, the Camarilla is playing that sort of game. It's like it's easy mode. I mean, that's one way to look at it, but at the same time, in many ways, it's a country club motherfucker, as Axel says. It can be. It can very much be like that. However, when you get into like the really, really high society Camarilla politics stuff, like Chicago, Boston, some of the places that matter a lot that they want to keep, like France would be a good one, London especially. It's hard to trust anyone, right? You could be under siege, and You don't know if the guy next to you is going to stab you in the back or not, because it's really everyone for themselves. They're much more selfish. They're much less inclined to help you do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you're part of something, but you're alone, which can be very much scarier, because you have no idea if there's going to be a knife in your back or not, or if you're going to meet the sun because you use the wrong, I don't know, word.
You backed the wrong horse.
People can be very petty. So, you know, when the barbarians are at the gate, you want to make sure the guy who's watching the gate is doing his job. And sometimes the Camarilla, someone won't do their job on purpose just to move ahead. So it's interesting. They may intentionally screw you over or unintentionally screw you over, because sometimes people just want it to come crumbling down so they can build it back up, pin it on you, and move ahead. Because it's extremely cutthroat. You know, it can be nerve-wracking playing a really tense Camarilla game. As far as the Sabbat, who has not been introduced to V5 yet, but they definitely need to be, and our buddy Mike Tomasek has snuck in a little bit of Sabbat here and there in his Chicago Folios works and such. You know, they get a bad rap for being like, oh, this is the murder hobo version of vampire, where you get to go around and cause mayhem, and it's like near dark, and you just kill everything and be a giant prick because you're a monster. Well, yeah, you are. But, you know, at the same time, listening to Utility Muffin Labs, Nate and Bob, and their love for the Sabbat really kind of enlightened me quite a bit as to like the deeper version of what they're about. Before the Camarilla was like, hey, let's worship Mithras, and we believe in the antediluvians now, and, you know, hey, religion's good. You know, in the past versions, they were like, no, we're not doing any of that. The antediluvians don't exist. You know, keep drinking the Kool-Aid, kids. Whereas the Sabbat were like, oh no, they're real, and we're the only defense against them, kind of thing. The Sabbat have a very spiritual aspect to them. In many ways, it's about the reconciliation for this thing you are. You know, they're not afraid to realize that they are complete monsters. But they're the ones that I think highlight personal horror the most, right? Because, you know, they all have a beast inside of them. And we watch Ellie by Night. Jason Carl's really cool, and he does the voice of the beast for some of the players, and it's a good dark reflection of who they are. A Sabbat game is kind of like meditating, looking inside yourself, and almost like in a Naruto fashion, you're meeting that demon who lives inside of you, trying to understand it, and figuring out a way to live with yourself and find something in common with this demon in order to walk forward. Because if you don't, and you keep acting like this horrible monster that you know you are, that you don't give a shit about anymore, you are going to lose yourself. And even though you're a horrible, vicious, brutal killer who's trying to tear down something like the Camarilla, you still don't want to lose yourself. It's just basic selfishness, preservation, right? So, oh, thank you, regular size mom. So walking into the dark, meeting your demon face to face, and finding a path where you can walk alongside of it and find common ground is what the Sabbat is all about. In the past, they called them different paths, whether it's Pact in the Inner Voice. You find out that your beast is kind of like the Venture. They'll do power at any cost. Okay, I can kind of understand that, beast. Let's listen to people who walked this path before us, find out what the do's and don'ts are, and I think I can live with that. And it changes you from being from a human mindset to a vampiric mindset, where it's not enough for you. It's something that it's like a life preserver. No matter what, as a kindred, you're sinking in an ocean, right? And humanity is gonna always be a slippery slope. The Sabbat are people who are constantly treading water, who find a life preserver in the strangest place. It's probably a dead whale, because let's face it, this is Sabbat, right? It's untraditional, but it works. It may not be a plastic inflatable thing like the Camarilla have, and we can call that humanity. Humanity made it. It's plastic. It's orange. The people in the lifeguard boats can come by and spot that from a mile away, and they can save you. Sabbat are a little more diehard, right? They will find that dead sea animal and tread water, and other sharks and other Sabbat people might come and kill you, but this is your goddamn floating shark, and you're going to fight to the death until it's taken you ashore. I mean, that's the best way I can explain the Sabbat, and hopefully I did it justice. But I think they're a much deeper and harder sect to play than maybe from a development standpoint. And with some of the rocky launch with V5, I can understand why they put it on the back burner. I think they really had to, and it's important in a world where we now have consent as the first thing we talk about in games. A Sabbat game would be very hard if you're playing it with random people. It's a kind of game that you have to play with people who are going to be okay with playing an intense wild ride.
Yeah, has some buy-in.
Of people who, you got to have a lot of buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand the people you're playing with, because you can go into dark places.
And some people might like that. They might enjoy that more too.
Oh, absolutely. I have not run a Sabbat campaign, but I have run Sabbat sessions where one of my players lost himself. He went down a slippery slot of humanity and was Diablo-rising left and right. He got down to maybe like 5 humanity. And then they were attacked by a Sabbat Bruja who was really strong. They got him down, and he once again went for the bite. And he lost a lot of rolls, and he lost, I think, 3 humanity. Yeah, Bran knows this story. So what happens when you Diablo-rise someone that's been through a Valkyrie? Like it or not, the Sabbat they're pretty unified. They drink a common cup of blood that they do a ritual on that binds them. Very much like a James Jonestown kind of cult. It's more than just drinking the Kool-Aid. They are bonded to each other with loyalty. You Diablo-rise someone like that, you're likely part of a family you never intended to be. The people in your life don't matter as much to you anymore, if at all. It's a scary thing, where it's a loss of agency that you don't even, if you're playing it right, you won't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you flipped a switch and now you're a completely different person. Yeah, they are their own Kool-Aid, absolutely. So I think adding the Sabbat into V5 is incredibly important, because it has a different and its own unique level of personal horror that maybe all of us weren't quite ready for at launch. I think we needed to really play the game and hammer out how safety mechanics work and get used to things beforehand before we had this deeper discussion as how to play the worst monsters,
The truly dark side of the kindred. I mean, it does tie into that religious horror you're talking about. It kind of, I'm really surprised that you really haven't done a lot of Sabbat stuff, or they're not like your, because it kind of seems like it's right up kind of your guys' alley, whether it be you or Ian and Mark. Like, you like that religious lore, you like the cults, like religious zealotry. That's what the Sabbat are at certain points.
I kind of did one as a side game for that player character who lost themselves, because I wanted to give him some closure. He rolled a new character so he could play with the other cast members, but I didn't just want to take this character who he's spent like 10 sessions on and be like, sorry, he's Sabbat now, see ya. I gave him I left it at a point where we could actually continue that story as him, as a Sabbat, and go from there and take a step forward. We've even talked about doing a couple Sabbat one-shots. I've had a couple of ideas in mind of how to do that, including a recent one from just Monday night. So if people are interested, and I know Big Dad's probably going to raise his hand, and Nick probably would too, we'd be totally down for it. But there would be a content warning for sure.
That's awesome. It kind of reminds me of the quote. I think it's from Star Trek: The Next Generation, where he goes.
Well, I'm going to tell you if it is.
Okay, I think the line is, everyone thinks that they're the hero of their own story, and the response is, what about the villains? And they say especially the villains.
Yeah, DS9.
Yeah, is that Deep Space Nine? Okay, so it's all right.
Yep, Elam Garrick. Yeah, it's like the best character starter.
And like I heard that last week, and it's kind of been sitting in my head. And you know, and I think if the whole idea of the Sabbat, just to kind of go way off topic for one thing, but the idea of the Sabbat, if they know the antediluvian's there and they're, you know, the force that's going to stop this end of the world event that's happening, in their mind they are the heroes. They're the ones that no one believed. They're the brotherhood, or the hood of some sort that stands as the last visage, the last bastion.
Yeah, they're very much like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's how I've always kind of seen them. You know, you've got humanity and all these senators who are like, we want to kill the X-Men. And the X-Men are like, but we could be pals, you know? Well, Magneto was pretty much right about everything. So, you know, I'm not saying this Sabbat are wrong, but they go about everything in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what makes it a great story.
Yeah, as Brand said, we are the truth that stands behind the illusion. And at 9:36, about a little less than an hour and a half left of our show, I think that's a perfect time to take a break. We're gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and we will be back to continue Vampire the Masquerade. I'm gonna run ads during it, so no one get alarmed, and see you all in 5 minutes while I get a refill of my water. All right.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be right back.
We're not in this stream. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay. And we are back. How's everyone doing today? I'm still good tonight? Awesome.
Doing great.
Amazing. All right. So we've taken our quick 5-minute break. Was it 5 minutes? I don't even know. It might have been a little shorter than that, but you know, we're back here because we love you.
Indeed.
And we love the deep dive. The show for Game Masters by Game Masters. Before we continue, I just want to say a special thank you to Cryo Chamber for giving us the opportunity to play this music that you've been hearing, this awesome ambience. Throughout all our deep dive episodes, they gave us the okay, and it's been awesome. It's really added some production value to it, to the show in general. They also allowed me to use it for another project, which hopefully you'll be seeing in the coming month or so. But I'm not gonna. Oh, and thanks for joining us for our show too. The Deep Dive, which you can catch every other Tuesday. Right here on Gehenna Gaming. Holy shit, why isn't every Tuesday, you ask, you say, right? Because every other Tuesday that the Deep Dive isn't on, we have some awesome fucking interviews that you can watch right here. And Ian doesn't just want to hear my mug every Tuesday. I understand it, I get it. I don't know, Ian, that kind of hurts sometimes, but I'm here for you.
He's a hurtful man.
You can also catch every Monday night Gehenna Valley, Season 2 of our Monster Hearts Extravaganza, which just actually premiered yesterday. If you're a subscriber, you can go watch the VOD before it goes on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube in about a week and a half, usually. I will say it's 2 weeks after promotion. But they premiere every Monday on Gehenna Valley. Regular size mom is indeed correct. It was awesome. They're awesome. We had Brian LeBurge. We had him on the show. Last deep dive where we talked about Monster Hearts. You can find that on YouTube. Give it a like, give us a subscribe, tune in. It was a great episode of the deep dive. That's a rhetorical question, a rhetorical statement, because every episode of the deep dive is great. We also had Wes doing a 2-parter on Alien the RPG. Two bros just coming to love each other. And this is kind of like me and interviewing my mentor on this all. My good friend, but also well, you brought me into Gehenna and we did the interview before where you interviewed me, but now the student has become master and I'm interviewing you. You can also check out every Wednesdays, I believe it's Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays, I believe it's Wednesdays now, Worlds and Crafts, which brand with I cannot know how to say Brand's actual name and this shit, Cathakaros? Alright, I know him as Brand. Well, you can check out Brand on Worlds and Crafts, where he is designing a world and populating everything in it, like the god that he is. And you're being able to talk to him and just chill out and have a conversation, or maybe add to the world and learn a little bit about world building, which is super important. Like we were just talking about it for half the stream on the deep dive here.
He's got that ASMR voice too, people say, where he just he's the Kenny G of tabletop role playing people. His voice is just
yeah. We were saying he's like Bob Ross. Sometimes I put Bran on just to take a nap kind of deal and just relax and soothe myself.
Kenny Bean.
I like Bran Ross is my personal favorite, but
oh, that's so good. Bean Ross.
And then every Thursday. Wait, I'm trying to think what Thursdays are.
We've got a lot of things on our schedule. Thursday is actually going to be something new, I believe.
Ooh, we can't say anything yet. Thursday has been our Thursday has been Dream Askew. Holy shit, yes. This is great. Natalie from Charm Person Games has been running Dream Askew, which is a queer-based focused RPG set in the not post-apocalypse, ongoing apocalypse. We're still here. It was an amazing limited run. Don't know if it's still going on or not. I believe it still is. There still has a few episodes left, but not.
I think so.
Yeah, it's amazing. You should check it out. Give them all your love. I don't think. Yeah, 2020, right? Honestly, I was just talking about this the other day. Before we get back, Gehenna Gaming, really good on the. In terms of where to watch queer gamers and queer content, Gehenna Gaming, we got it down. Whether it be Monster Hearts or Dream School, yeah.
I want them in every game.
The horror community, one of the most inclusive. I'm just gonna say it.
Strange,
Facts.
but true.
You wouldn't, yeah, you wouldn't expect it, but horror does not. I was arguing that I thought horror is actually one of the most feminist genres out there. Think about it. As far as I can remember, and like science fiction's also like I feel like can be
yeah.
It hasn't been recent, but it can be, because well, Shirley Jackson, one of the mother of modern horror, one of the best writers of our time, happens to be a woman. One of the best, the idea of one of the best protagonists, like feminist protagonist, Ellen Ripley, horror movie.
Yep.
Never
Ripley, like when I was a kid and I first saw Aliens, which scared the shit out of me when I was a little boy. Seeing Ellen Ripley kick everything's ass and be smart and like just as amazing as she was, I think it absolutely solidified everything I ever needed to know about how amazing women are in my life. And
it's also, yeah.
I think from a kid on, that's how I've continued to always treat them and see them. So, you know, these things have a deep impact on our psyche and how we see the world and treat other people. So, you know, keep on making that great fiction because it inspires real people to do good things.
I just want everyone to know that one of these arms, or possibly my leg, I have already like been like, all right, one of these is gonna have a tattoo of Ripley on it because she is the strongest woman, the baddest bitch I know, and I will honor her.
Sigourney Weaver would probably sign it for you.
Dude, I wish. Oh my god.
You could
sign it and then get that tattooed.
Yeah.
On the picture. Oh my god. In an instant, in a heartbeat.
I'm gonna write her a letter now.
I'm about to say, yeah, like, hey, can you send like your signature back so we can get signed on my tattoo?
Yeah, we're not totally gonna like make fake checks or anything.
No. Oh, I guess that could be a problem as well. I feel like if I took a picture of it, I feel like it'd be cool. That could be cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I just want the picture, like picture phone. Let's go. We're diving right back into it. Oh wait, did I forget it? And Fridays is going to be something soon.
Indeed.
But Saturday's been dedicated to Saturday Night One Shots, so you can check it out. We have an awesome charity game that is going to be running on Halloween this Saturday. The Magnus Archives stuck in the Magnus Institute, which we're going to be running the charity for the Legal Defense Fund from the NAACP. Awesome organization, really important stuff going on right now. We have an all-star cast. We got Alexander Ward, Cynthia Marie, both of them are LA by Night, and other cool shit. We have Ellie Collins from Atlanta by Night. And also, City by Night, which you should totally take on here in Comfort Studios, their Twitch. We also had Jacob Burgess, fucking awesome dude, funny ass guy, designer galore.
He's good. Yeah. That's a good cast.
Shit.
And some nerd is running it named Ian Miller, who happens
asshole.
to be my business partner. And
my boss. Fuck that
friend.
No, we love you, Ian.
We do.
Sometimes.
So we have lots of fun things. Sunday we also have our Forbidden Lands stream and I think Warhammer possibly, or I'm not sure if that moved to Darker Days. But stay tuned. We always have fun things in the pipeline. We're always planning ahead and putting things on the schedule. But yeah, tune in to support a great cause Saturday for our Call of Cthulhu special Magnus Archives game with all those fine folks.
Now that I've rambled for 10 minutes plus on plugging a lot of shit,
Well,
time to get back into. Thank you. It's time to get back into the deep dive here.
Quite
I apologize for all the coughing I've been doing. I'm feeling a little under the weather. Just getting over cold, nothing too crazy. I blame my girlfriend. You're watching it. I blame you. Oh.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Just saying. You gotta obey your thirst here.
I know. What is trying to slime me there? I'm not gonna lie. So this is gonna be a huge question. Kind of going back on So you talked about what an Anarch game, a Camarilla game, and a Sabbat is. But for the people out there that are kind of getting in their head, what about like a mixed bag kind of thing? What if we had players from all three sections? Can you do it? And is it worth it? Or is it just so much of a hassle that you would just be like, I don't think you should?
Went down the wrong pipe. If you have a good story reason for why things have gotten together, and one of the only things I can imagine is if literally the Second Inquisition went on, like, kind of like London, right? There was a while in BTM before the Fall of London came out where we were pretty much like, oh no, every kindred in London is dead. Right? Because MI6 just upped their game, had enough, and took them down. That's an awesome, crazy survival horror thing. And when that kind of thing is happening, that kind of reaction from the moral populace, I don't think it really matters if you're this or that anymore. I think it's, you're gonna die, come with me if you want to live. That's that. So it might be fun to have a story like that and explore that in a game. So yeah, it's totally possible. I can't imagine there being too many scenarios where something like that is going to happen, but you know, use your imagination, be the best storyteller you can be, and if you're dead set on it, make it happen. Just think about it, make it plausible.
So you're thinking maybe like it's a good for like a brief shot of story, like maybe a one shot or a two shot, but you don't, in your head, it might be a little more difficult across like a elongated campaign.
I mean, in a way, I remember there being a really good, I think it was Orphan Survival Guide. Actually, I'm almost positive it was. If you read that, you know, a lot of the books, when you read a clan book, they've got great stories at the beginning. The Orphan Survival Guide one, I think it's either Kadif or it's the chapter where it's like the Lupine tribe that is the outcast. It's about a kindred and a werewolf girl who find each other in the woods, and they don't immediately kill each other. And they're kind of like running because she's running from her pack for some reason. He's running from the city he was at where he was braided by a Kadif and was going to be put to death. And they do survive and kind of make their way, but they get separated. And I think when they reconnect, I don't want to spoil it, but it gets dark, and it's definitely an emotional thing. So I think it can happen, like many things that might be interesting, good, and a fun ride. I don't think it's something that can last. Either one of those kindred are going to convert to one faction or the other, or there's going to be one less kindred around. You know, two can keep the secret if three can keep the secret if two are dead, kind of scenario.
I like that. I like that answer a lot, actually. Okay. So, vampires are not the only things that go bump in the night in your setting if you're a GM. How do you decide what other supernatural threats to add into your game, even if it's just for a note of detail, like, here there be dragons? Well, I guess
I
there
love
be.
it. No, I absolutely love it. In fact, I have got it right in front of me. World of Darkness, I think it might have been around revised, came out with a cool book that was essentially like a monster manual. And it's the Bygone Bestiary. It's a World of Darkness source book that literally has dragons, cockatrices, all kinds of crazy things. I think it's primarily meant for mage, but it's cool. You can, yeah, I know it's hard to see with a digital background, but Bygone Bestiary is pretty rad. Sphinxes, all kinds of things. But they're, you know, fantasy monsters are cool to add into games. Will they fit in yours? I don't know. In my games, I have done some stuff with the Fae, Changelings. I've added Nefandi. I definitely use mages, both good and bad. Technocrats are a definite option, but the world's your oyster. If you can find something interesting and pull an interesting story out of some of these other facets of the World of Darkness, like Ian used Call of Cthulhu. I've been experimenting with running some Vampire the Masquerade stuff where you have something like out of Cult of Cthulhu Lost. How does a kindred deal with something that is reality changing? It doesn't have to be something that is set in the meta plot. It could be your own meta plot. It doesn't have to be World of Darkness. Run a Vampire the Masquerade game in the world of Cult Divinity Lost. No one says you can't. You could do an entire VTM game based in Tales from the Loop.
Yeah, no one's gonna kick down your door and say you can't do this.
Yeah, Free League is not going to sue you for running a game that is for fun with your friends. But if you're inspired by something and you can tell a good story, absolutely go for it. The more things that your players don't expect, they're going to have a blast with. They're going to try and figure out that mystery. If it's something, the familiar is not scary.
I thought you were taking another dramatic pause.
I thought I was too, and then I was like, that's a good place to stop.
All right. So
don't say anything more.
So we talk about the supernatural threats, which you brought the bygone bistro. You told us like what we could do, crossing it over. But what about the threats that aren't supernatural that you could add to your game? Things that you can come on later on. Like, what are the best non-supernatural threats?
It's going to be a brutal answer. This is going to be an unexpected and brutal answer.
Uh-oh. Take your bets now, people.
And you're not going to probably expect what I'm going to say. The best non-supernatural threats, when you get asked that question, you immediately think, it's probably going to be like the SI or the Society Leopold or something that's not supernatural coming at you. It could be a lawyer it could be those people who call your phone constantly and they want to extend your car's warranty and they find out you're a kindred. Well, that sucks. Wrong number, dude. No, the best non-supernatural threat, in my opinion, is someone who comes up to your character in a game that you might not even know. Could just be a character off the street. And they are kind to you. And you don't expect it. You certainly don't deserve it. Because you know that you're dangerous. You're putting them in danger just by them talking to you. Because some other kindred could see you on the street, talking to someone, and you have a smile on your face. They're going to believe, that person must matter to them. I'm going to mail them pictures of them being tortured. And you don't know that person anything. You might not have met them any day in your life, but they did something to you, for you, saw something human in you that you haven't seen in a long time, that was kind and unexpected. Maybe it made you, maybe you're like a Humanity 5 and you realize, shit, I've come a long way from when I was at a Humanity 7. Not like a player would say that, but you know that you're not who you used to be. You've slidden down a path and someone recognized that you could be more. And then you watch that person unintentionally suffer for it. Whether you rolled badly and couldn't control your hunger, or someone else acted upon them thinking that they were your touchstone. Maybe they're kidnapped, they're murdered, whatever. You get attached to people who are good, and they deserve better in their life for being kind and being a light in the world of darkness. And to see a kindred have that taken away from them, taken away from the world, simply because they were in the wrong place, wrong time, and talked to you, I think that is the best non-supernatural threat that people don't see coming. I ran a story with a guy on Twitter, who I think his @handle is Gothic Mountain Fox. He's a good player, great friend. And he was in one of my first games I ever ran, period, as a storyteller. And I had him have a absolutely horrific embrace where he was at literally on an altar, kidnapped a bunch of Tremere, stab him in the arms, legs with a spear. It's like a pipe that's sharp on each end. And they bleed into him as they stab him in the chest. He bleeds out. They're filling their blood. It takes more Tremere to embrace someone because their blood's a little weaker. And in the middle of this, as he's getting embraced, the cops show up, save him, not knowing that he's about to turn into a kindred. All of the kindred Tremere who were doing this to him flee. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't see his sire for years, and he's been furious, pissed off that was done to him. Finally gets a word that the guy is in Salem, wants to go kill him, sees him at an Elysium with his back turned, talking to somebody. And as he gets a little closer and the guy finally turns around because he's going to leave Elysium, he sees the person he embraced in this bizarre ceremony. And the player is ready to go tear him a fucking new one. Like, he had everything planned in his head as far as what he was going to say, what he was going to do. He was ready to even throw down an Elysium and get killed by the prince just to get back at this guy. And instead, the guy had tears in his eyes, ran to him and hugged him and said, "I thought I lost you." And the player was just like flabbergasted. His jaw dropped. He was like, you know, and after the session, he was like, I'm still reeling from that. I had no idea that was going to happen. I did not expect that at all. That's like one of the most jarring experiences I've ever had in a tabletop game ever. And I'm just like, well, shit, kindness is scary, you know?
That's intense.
When you don't deserve it, that's really rough. And I just kind of found it out by experimenting. I don't know. But, you know, I thought about it when you asked me the question, like, what's a non-supernatural threat that's scary? Well, someone with a gun's not scary. Someone that doesn't have a weapon is immortal. Certainly isn't scary unless they, they're blackmailing you or something. Kindness. That's it for me.
Something that makes you feel human.
Yeah, I don't deserve this. I know what I've done. I've got, like, Black Widow in the Avengers movie. She doesn't think she deserves to be there because she's done a bunch of horrible shit. I've got right on my ledger, she keeps saying, you know? And, yeah, Kindred know that they aren't who they used to be, and that they don't, many of them probably believe that they do not deserve to be treated like human beings. But when they are, it probably doesn't feel right anymore, and that's alien and horrific too.
That's, Jesus, there's some beautiful quotes coming out of it. Rick,
that's why you play Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah. That was a really actually pretty emotional story. Sad we have to leave the question, the point, but
we can keep talking about it.
Well, we just explain. I just don't know what to say. It's just the idea of, like, I didn't expect it. No, kindness was not the threat I expected. But yeah, I think.
I mean, I could imagine another player being like, I can see a player reaction being, depending on who it is, being like, no, get away from me. You don't know what I am. Get away from me. You don't want to be seen with me. And maybe the person's just way too kind. Like, don't say that about yourself. You're better than that. You're a human being. You know, people in your life have probably done that to you. You're having a real shit day. You don't believe in yourself. You've got imposter syndrome. Maybe you have done a bunch of hard shit, and someone just doesn't give up on you. You know, when you're a human being and you fight it because you're stubborn and you're convinced that you're awful, that's one thing. When you actually aren't a human being and you are awful,
yeah,
fuck. You know, you could even wish to believe that person. You can try and deceive yourself that they're right. But the truth is they aren't right. You are a monster. There's no other way out of that puzzle.
I feel like we just answered a lot of stuff that it's gonna come up later, but yeah, I mean, that ties hand in hand. It's just, someone suggested that entropy be considered one of the greatest non-supernatural threats, but I would even go a step further and take that answer and be like, it's emotional entropy, but not the act of it itself, but the realization of how far you've fallen.
Well, it's the entropy of your humanity.
Yeah, and then looking back on it and be like, wow.
That's going to be someone's Twitter handle by the end of this.
Entropy of humanity. Yeah, that sounds like a metalcore album about to drop.
Vampire game with the sun goes out. You know, we talked about Star Trek earlier, and another DS9 thing. I think I've told some people this before that I thought it was interesting. This is kind of non-VTM related, but they had the situation where these people who kind of like were following what Orf did in his example, it was a time thing, so it was all out of whack, but they saw him as like this iconic figure, and they were like, oh no, hunting and being a warrior is all what it's about, and these people who are farming, they don't really have an enemy, they're pointless. You know, why do that and toil? You can go in the forest and kill your food and hunt and fight and all these things. And Warfer's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, they have an enemy. Time is their enemy. And every day they've got to fight time and work their asses off before the sun sets, before they can't do any of this stuff anymore. And if they don't do enough of it, they're probably going to die. So how about you stop being a prick, pick up a garden hoe, and help them out? You know, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, time is everyone's enemy, isn't it? Unless you're a vampire and you've got all the time in the world.
And then again, even that.
But that's a problem too. Yeah.
The beckoning. That was called.
Yeah, the beckoning.
Yeah, eventually that clock runs up for you.
Some kindred get away from it.
But they can only get away from it for so long, and it's just. Oh, that's also a great theme to explore. Like.
It is. V5 has dropped a lot of cool new story nuances, like the bombing of Vienna and, you know, things like the beckoning that, you know, some of them are unanswered, but they make fun stories.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go into the next point then. You know that the.
Alrighty.
So we talked about. It's weird because we talk about vampire. They're only experiencing the city in a small. What is it? Maybe an 8-hour time span, maybe 10-hour and winter nights.
Yeah.
That. There's an entire 14 to like 20 additional hours that they are. Sorry, 14 to like 16 additional hours that they don't get to explore. Not only that they don't get to explore, they just can't because the sun will murder them. So from vampires that are forced to sleep from dusk till dawn every night, or from dawn till dusk, sorry. How can the every night? How can the GM play the city during the day? You kind of mentioned it with the news reports earlier with when you were talking about. But what are some more things that you can do?
So I do that. I do some like news report stuff, but I don't always know. I don't always know what I'm going to get for players, and you know, when you make a character in V5, they typically be like, okay, give me 1, maybe 2 touchdowns, and maybe a conviction that goes along with that person. But realistically, you have a lot more than 2 people. I mean, they may not be considered touchstones. They're not like the most important person in the world to you, which is what touchstones kind of are in V5. But I mean, Nick Francia could pick his grandpa, who means the world to him. But in reality, Nick Francia has cousins, maybe nieces, maybe a brother, a sister. They might not be as close, but these are people in his life. People who nag him when he doesn't show up to a holiday, or give him shit for putting raisins in potato salad, that kind of thing. So there are a lot more characters that are kind of floating around each person, each personality. I've actually got a separate document that's aside from any project I'm working on that's just like personalities, and I've got like a list of potential grandfathers, grandmothers, co-workers, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, etc. People you meet at the gas station. And these are just people that you can like, oh man, that dude was weird. I'm gonna write about him. You know, use real life as an inspiration. But it's helpful to have a document like that because you can just plug those into some character's life who's playing vampire.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, you know, as a storyteller, like, you remember this guy because, you know, he was a real close friend of your cousin's and you hung out when you were kids. And all of a sudden he sees you on the street and this is what happens. You know, and that's believable. Like, no player is going to be like, I didn't put that on my character sheet, because that is something that everyone has, everyone relates to. That's uncontrollable. People are uncontrollable and they know you. And that can be really problematic as a person with a schedule and a big secret that they're a fucking monster, you know? Especially with the previous point that I talked about of how just being around you is dangerous. I mean, that cousin that you think is kind of a douchebag. Yeah, you don't like him. You don't want him to die. If he did die, your grandfather, who is Nick's touchstone, would be devastated. So now, Nick's vampire character is stuck having to look out for this dude because he was seen with you somewhere, and one of your kindred buddies or a kindred rival saw you together. Great. Now I gotta look out for this a-hole or ghoul somebody to look out for them, just so that my dear grandfather, who is my touchstone, doesn't have a broken heart and dies. Fuck. That's vampire. Those are the consequences that we don't often think about when we're playing vampire or even writing vampire, but those are things that happen in real life. And this is a modern game that we need to take those kind of relationships and you don't take them for granted. Put them in the story because they help drive a narrative. It might not be the classic I'm going to take down the prince narrative, but you're playing a person. You're here to tell a personal story about horror. And in this case, Nick's touchstone, his grandfather, is the person that Nick decided means the most to him. So I'm not going to necessarily go directly after the grandfather because, that might be a cliche, or it might be too on the nose or expected. But something like the douchebag cousin that now Nick has to look out for, that might make for an interesting story. What if he gets embraced? What if he gets ghouled by someone else? And now, you got the car from your uncle, his dad, that he wanted, but you got your license first, so it went to you, and he's held that against you forever. And now he knows your secret, and now maybe he's embraced by a different client, and you gotta, 20 years could go by, and every one of your family members might be old and dead, and you still have to deal with this dickhead cousin just because he saw you on the wrong day.
It can change you to so much.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah, and I'm even thinking maybe maybe you have like you said, you have siblings, and they're constantly checking out on you, and eventually there's going to be that awkward moment where you go to visit your siblings, and they're old and you're not.
Yeah, the VTM comic covers that a little bit, and it's interesting. So, I mean, aside from people that you can have satellite around your player character, I come up with a bunch of scenarios that make perfect sense that happen in the world of darkness. That might be a news thing, or it might be something the player comes across. I remember I told Mark a couple of them the other day, and one of them was a kid who's in college, who's got a lot of student debt. He's been working 2 jobs while going to school, and he's constantly sliding into debt. He knows that the job he's going to be taking with this college degree is not going to be able to help him overcome this mountain of debt that's going to put him in poverty. Like maybe he's going to be a teacher, social worker, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's never going to overcome this hurdle. And he's depressed. Maybe he doesn't have the right people in his life. It's a depressing situation anyway, but he's having a really hard time. He goes into an alley and he finds a duffel bag full of 50 grand in cash and 3 bags of dark red liquid. And that's something that is now a story. It might not have anything to do with any other story, any other kindred I have going on in that city setting, but it's something that maybe someone who owes you a favor noticed and they texted you like, hey, I saw this, it looked weird. He came in, he asked about these bags. I work at the medical clinic. I said, I don't know, it's not like any blood I've ever seen. And he kind of told me his story and gave me a name, but I don't have any contact info. And your character this entire time is like, fuck. That's probably kindred vitae because this guy is a medical expert and he would have known. There's a guy out there who could be breaking the masquerade. I need to either deal with this or ignore it, and maybe it won't get back to me. Or the ghoul who I know that's the medical dude, they'll chase him down because that's what the sheriff does. They'd be like, well, I told Nick. Whoa, Nick didn't do anything about it. Why didn't you do anything
Nick's
about
fault,
it, Nick?
yeah.
Yeah, oh, fuck. Now Nick's being killed.
Now I meet the final death.
Yeah, now you meet the final death. You get the big old Nosferatu sheriff chopping your head off. For something simple, like you overlooked something that you thought was probably not going to get traced back to you. You don't know. And some of those little stories that I've kind of peppered and introduced like maybe once a setting, once every other setting that happened during the day. Some of them go nowhere. Some of them, if you ignore them, they become bigger problems. But I think that everyone who makes, I don't know, maybe this is me just being, yeah, I think you should do this. But I think you should do this because it helps make the world alive.
I like that a lot, and it also makes you kind of think like, you know, how vulnerable vampires really are if they can't go out during the day. Like, plots can be moved against them. Like, it's so important to have ghouls to like protect you or like fulfill your like, you know, your needs or your errands during the day. But like, I'm trying not to say like too much. But
What if that ghoul gets captured by the police and all of a sudden he gets drug tested and they're like, hey, I don't know why you have the stamina of a fucking racehorse, but you better explain what's up. And he can't say some guy gave me his blood. He's going to say some guy gave me a performance enhancer.
Or I'm like, imagine you go for elongated sleep and now someone has built a stadium over you or apartments.
Really, you know, it's like, really, well, where did you get this performance enhancer? Nick did it. Now all of a sudden they've got a warrant to go into your home. It's only 3 p.m. Well, shit.
They bust in, they find a literal corpse. So now they have all the investigatives going, and then they carry that corpse out in a body bag, and you wake up in a morgue.
Right. And I like, I'll actually pull it up because I want to make sure I get it right. There's a quote by Ben Franklin.
It's really cool. You could just like wake up. Like, as a kindred, you could just literally go to sleep one place and wake up another and just be like, well,
I'm dead.
Me. Yeah.
So this is a Ben Franklin quote. It's called "For the Want of the Nail." For the want of the nail, the shoe was lost. For the want of the shoe, the horse was lost. For the want of a horse, the rider was lost. For the want of the rider, the battle was lost. For the want of the battle, the kingdom was lost, all for the want of a nail. And it's about how little problems can become big ones, especially when they're ignored. And we live in that kind of world, whether you're kindred or not. So those are means and avenues and ways you can tell a story that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a supernatural enemy.
Yeah.
You're playing a game where you're living a life as a monster, but you're still playing a game where you're living a life.
All right. So the final question of this little section here, before we move on to the next one, I'm actually considering stopping after this question, depending on how long it takes, just because we're definitely going to need a part 2 on this. But it's like, how much do I want to save for the other part 2? So
you can always make more questions.
I could always, that is entirely possible, and that's probably what I'll do. But so the interesting thing about, you know, playing a game in the real world, in our modern world, is people have been there. People have existed in this world before and made their own stories, their own legends, their own campaigns. And we often see about real world figures bringing life to fiction. How do you go about putting these like historical figures as these supernatural creatures, like these people that you long thought, like Chicago by Light, Capone, long thought dead, actually a vampire? How do we juxtapose player expectations of certain events to the events in Vampire the Masquerade?
You know, I thought about it quite a bit because I don't typically use a lot of historical people. I use a lot of historical settings in history. But every now and then I throw someone who's like, you know, I think this one building is cool. It's got a lot of crazy history to it. And I'd like to include it. And I had one character that I recently was like, I don't know if there's not enough to this guy. But then I read about this place and I was like, oh, I'll just, you know, I think I'm going to revise this and tie him into this place and give him a reason for being there. And that developed into a much better story with a much better character, because I took a second look at it and I merged two things, you know. But I even changed his name to reflect someone was in charge of an insane asylum. And it was a real guy. And I looked up this person to try and find some history or clues about his personality. But, you know, if you're not a nationwide celebrity or a huge figure in like a medical journal or whatever, you don't always find those answers, so you got to kind of make them yourself. Al Capone, kind of like a notorious criminal. People can look him up anywhere and find out all kinds of stuff about him. So there's different like levels of fame for the kind of historical figures you can put in there. But I mean, that being said, I like it in a way because it can show other players how vampires are kind of like time capsules, right? You can have someone who is a crusader who is now in modern day, and kindred are static. They don't really change. Like, that guy's not going to be able to use a computer very well. Or even if he learns and struggles and strives to learn, and you get 3 dots a computer because you put it on your sheet, the next night he may understand the concept of a computer, but he might gradually continue to forget how to use it because it's not in his wheelhouse. I mean, it's a weird thing where the system kind of betrays the lore that you're a static being, even though you're constantly growing because you put experience points in. But at the same time, it's like, it just depends on the kind of story you want to tell. But, I think it can be interesting. I think that's always been something I loved about the Anne Rice novels. The most important part of those books to me was you have characters from all over the different types of the world, whether like Marius de Romanis was a druidic person who lived in Gaul, northern France, and he gets abducted. Next thing you know, he's all over the world. He's in Egypt, he's living in the Mediterranean, and it allows you to just kind of like, if you're playing that character as a storyteller, you can kind of take, V5 has a cool thing called memoriams where you can do a scene back in time. They did one in LA by Night where it's
French
Suzanne.
Revolution.
Yeah, Suzanne remembering things from the French Revolution. If you have old characters like that in the game, especially if they're of notoriety or fame, you can take your characters through some interesting places outside of a modern setting because it still makes sense. There's no reason that I couldn't run a game, and I love Dark Ages, and I've even run a bunch of Dark Ages games, but there's no reason I couldn't take my modern day players, have them meet a kindred from way back when, and to just have them role play as characters in that setting for a little while that ancient character is reliving something that they thought they forgot. Sky's the limit. I mean, I love the new Chronicles of Darkness 2nd edition Mummy game because it allows you to kind of jump through time. But vampires are immortal. And with this great new mechanic for telling stories, you could do the same in Vampire. And I think I kind of forgot that, And you have to have the kind of players that are willing to undertake that kind of story, but it's something you can do. And I think adding those historical characters like Al Capone, if you're running a Chicago by Night game with Al Capone, you could absolutely have him begin to tell you a story about sometime he knocked off a bank, and just have your players in a noir setting in Chicago robbing a bank with Al Capone as one of his memories. And then something that you noticed during that robbery, or maybe where one guy screwed him over, and this is something Capone could never figure out. It was part of the cut that disappeared, right? And now as you're role-playing this with him, by going through these memories, you realize, what if they put the cut of the money over there where they started the heist? But that's something Capone never thought of. Next thing you know, your modern day, your player character checks it out because Capone was telling you the story you got really involved in, and shit, you just found 50 grand. There's no reason you can't do that in Vampire, and it's a lot of fun to explore those things.
Oh, so kind of like a bonus question then for this: what historical figure would you want to bring into your Vampire the Masquerade game?
Oh, damn!
You have any historical figure, and how would you do it? I'll put you on the spot there.
I mean, I've done some with my current project, so I don't really want to necessarily bring those up. Actually, I will. I'll get into one. So as you said earlier, I do Salem by Night kind of game, or River Shore, where it's the larger area as a whole, but it's focused on Salem. I brought back John Proctor one of the men who was condemned of witchcraft along with his wife in the Salem witch trials. And in my game, he is a wraith. And there's a lot of different things wraiths can do, especially with some of the extra stuff that has come out in Cults of Blood Gods. So he is an ongoing character who has been part of that setting and scenario for over 400 years, just like some of the Kindred. So it's kind of like a staple of the place. But unlike Kindred, he can change. Not physically because he's a wraith, but he's not. His mind is not stuck necessarily in one mode of thinking. So I mean, it's not the most notorious historical figure, but it's someone that, when reading and doing research, I was like, man, it'd be cool if we could talk to this guy. So I kind of just did,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm gonna wrap up the Vampire the Masquerade questions there for our part 2, because we still have almost an entire, another page of questions that'll probably be expanded upon. But I will ask you one for the last section, which I was going to talk to you about you personally, because I think it's fresh in your mind. You just wrote for it. Before you leave us today, can you tell us about writing for Red Opera?
Absolutely. What do you want to know? Just what it was like and stuff?
What it was like. I mean, how did it feel writing for, as a Kickstarter, stretch goal for an official book, campaign book? That's gonna be crazy awesome.
I'm still as of today, because I finished it Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Mark had this great initial concept. We had 2 Zoom meetings where we were he's very good at structure. That's where I am not great at, right? I need a little bit of a skeleton to build many kinds of monsters. Give me a skeleton and I can run for days. So Mark kind of provides that, and we work really well off each other. We ping ideas off each other, and anything we forget, we're like, what about this? And we come up with a great solution to it. So I ended up writing the bulk of it, and we had a lot of it planned out, but we're great procrastinators, and when in the final midnight hour, we're just like, it's done. But it's one of those things. I like creative. My creative process is I think about things for a while, and then when I finally act on it, like I was telling Nick off camera or off stream, my brain is like a bunch of ingredients that were thrown into my brain, and I didn't know my brain was making a smoothie, but all of a sudden there's a smoothie and it's delicious. And I guess people just work different ways, but writing for the Red Opera was a lot of fun because I developed a love for D&D, which is something I never really played until Rick Heinz ran the Red Opera for us. So I developed my love for warlocks. I made a new path for warlocks.
Awesome.
That is different than the traditional I've got a patron thing, which I'm excited for everyone to check out and read. I developed the different features of the class and the spell list and things and all of the lore for it, and I'm really happy with how it all came out. As far as the scenario, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's very much in our wheelhouse of horror and mystery. I think it's just going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to. I think we talked about doing a Saturday night one shot for it, which I would love. What's funny is I don't know who's going to run it, whether it's going to be me or somebody else. But no, I mean it was a blast, and it's super weird and surreal. I think I posted about it in Gehenna today on the general, where I'm like, I think it's weird. I'm like, as we handed it over to Ian to edit, I'm like, shit, I'm technically a published author now, and it's bizarre. It's like, yeah, I've been writing another project or two for like a number of years, and it's a lot of fun, and it's going to probably go to print someday. Yeah, but to have something that's just like, and now it's out and it's guaranteed to be printed, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And the fact that I can put published author on a resume. I called my mom today and I was like, I'm technically a published author now. This is absolutely like a dream come true. Bizarre. That's awesome. Right? I'm still trying to live with this truth, and it hasn't happened yet. I'm still flabbergasted, but it's fantastic. I can't wait to do it again or write for something else. Like, you know, when I made the Fatal Choices thing, I'm like, that's cool, and it's a free resource, but I don't think of myself as being like, I'm a published author. You know, I made that for people who it's a gateway into V5 when there really wasn't one, and that's just kind of like, hey, community, I love you guys. Use this, don't use this, whatever, have fun. But to have something that's going to be in a book that people buy is bizarre to me. I'm very happy. I don't think I'll ever get used to it. Like I'm still not getting used to the fact that I'm being interviewed by someone I respect, who's a friend of mine, because I'm crazy about a hobby that we love. You know, it's been a wild Gehenna Gaming ride, and I'm just grateful for all of it and all the people that tune into us, share games with us, run games with us, playing games with us, watch the streams. It's really fantastic, man. I don't have
feeling.
Even when I have bad days, they're not really that bad because I've got so much great stuff going on and such a great outlet and a community, and we're really lucky.
Not a dry eye in the house right now. Let me tell you that. Rick,
I'm making you hydrate now.
Rick, thank you so much for being on the show. I super appreciate it. And you'll be back. Can I count you back on in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah. We'll do some more questions maybe. We got to keep them VTM specific, but like Ian said, we could talk lore for days, right? I mean.
Oh yeah, that's probably how we're gonna take a look at it. I'm gonna restructure some of the notes we have so far. Maybe break up the questions.
Questions are so damn good, dude.
Oh, thank you. I fucking appreciate
ridiculous.
That.
You shared them with me, and I was like, because every time we do these, we're like, oh, it's gonna be a nice chat. We're gonna have fun. It's a topic you know very well. And then I read these questions, and I'm like, these are really good questions.
Like I'm gonna grill you. Oh, I think I was telling there's specifically with a section. I think we were talking about Brian, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna grill you at the end of this. He was like, really? He's like, oh. I was like, oh yeah. Like, your show just ended. I'm gonna grill the fuck out of you.
Well, he's a good being, so he deserves it.
Yes, and I'm gonna grill the hell out of you too. So don't worry about that.
Do it.
That's as I've been.
Medium rare.
And honestly, this has probably been some of the most provoking conversations we've had on this show. I think all our episodes have been out of the park so far, but yeah, this has been some rare good shit.
It's funny when people ask me questions, and I talk about things, I sometimes say things that even I haven't realized, like the stuff about the Sabbat I've kind of thought about before, but the way it came out of my mouth tonight, I'm like, God damn, why didn't I think about that way before?
Yeah, someone needs to go clip that Sabbat explanation, say that to Modiphius, and be like, Rick, you should get Gehenna to write your shit, because this is to get Rick especially.
Well, I would, if I were to do anything with the Sabbat, especially if I had any authority to pull people on board, Nate Seaver, Bob from the 25 years of ETM, Mike Tomasek, and a couple people like that. Holy crap. I would pull in those guys because they know a lot about the Sabbat. My friend Rachel Lindman, Matthew Webb, those people, I mean, the night in question alone, there's so many people that are absolute diehard fanatics about the Sabbat. And what I really know about the Sabbat, I learned from hearing them. And, obviously from reading the books, but there's something about like the player experience that is, and some people call it like tribal knowledge, right? There's so much you can pull from these books. And I have a lot of books, but I learn the most when I have conversations with people who have read them, right? And that's why we have shows like The Deep Dive.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. This has been an amazing conversation, and yeah, I agree with you. I would love to write. I specifically, I would love to be on a project with Mare and Mike. They're amazing. They're awesome.
They're so good.
I like I tell them, like I fell in love with both of them over VHC, and I was like, they were just such a fun to have. And I've played with both of them, never together in a game, but I've played with each of them, especially Mike in that Dark Ages game you ran. And that was so much fun, and just a grand old time. And then
well, I'm gonna have you back for Dark Ages as well as
oh yeah,
people we played with last time, like Puppy Lover, Regular Size Mom, Mark. Yeah, I want to have everyone back because I planned for way too much and I love it too much to say no. I love playing with all of those people.
Oh,
So
will I be reprising Alessandro?
yeah, I'm not. There are certain character sheets that I was like, no, these belong to these people now. I'll make new characters if I have to. Fuck that noise. So at this point, the Bruja librarian is forever a regular size mom. Kay is always going to be the apothecary. You're always the Tremere. It's funny because like I had several people play the Sombra, but at this point, all three of them were so different. I think I'm going to take Alex Ward's and just different guy, and then Mike and Mark can arm wrestle for who gets to play the La Sombra.
Oh my god, the Pope La Sombra, as I call the. I love. Yeah, no.
I mean, John Burke is Susanoo, the Nosferatu. You can't replace him. I don't know what his schedule's like, but I'm gonna have to talk to him. It was too good. And Crystal Mazer and Dixie are just so great. I love them in every game. So.
I know. Oh man, that's like a list of like players. Sorry, we're kind of getting off topic. But we're just kind of filling out time here, just like shooting the shit.
There's so many people I love to play with.
Hey, I do too. I'm trying to think of people I haven't played with. Specifically.
Well, no, I had Big Dad as Impact Unplugged, but I want him back for another game.
I'm trying to think of I've never. Oh my god, have I played? So I've played the Final Girl with Big Dad, and obviously, I've played in a game that Big Dad has run, but I don't think I've ever played a game like where a traditional GM to player with him, or maybe I have, and I'm just forgetting.
Well, I mean, there's a friend of ours in the community that I have never had run a game for us, and it's One Unbeating Heart, and he is interested in running 10 Candles.
Yeah, I had One Unbeating Heart on for him and Jay for Little Fears. And it was awesome.
They're a blast.
Yeah, they were great. Okay, this name escapes me. Who played I think it was the Nosferatu in our Dark Ages game, the like secret.
That was John Burke.
John Burke was amazing, from his accent to the way he played his character. That would be a guy I would love to play with him again, like every day of the fucking week. And then of course, like I would love to play with if you know Ottaway again. Amazing dude. I only GM for him. I didn't get to play with him, but love to play with him. Dixie is always a blast. But that's just come like that. That's like a person I just enjoy having like game time with because she's so much fun to play with. Obviously, Ian, Mark, and you. I've never played in a game side by side. Yet again, I've never played in a game side by side with Bran. I played with him in Final Girl, and I GM'd him in the Nowhere House, both on YouTube. But I've never played alongside Bran. And actually, we just did a one-shot together. I'm fucking dumb, but not on stream. We just did that one-shot together. Holy shit! Crazy.
In real life, I've been insane enough to run some really big games, like 12, 13 people games. I don't know how I do that online, but I'm racking my brain to figure out how. Because I want to play with so many people.
No, I definitely do. I think it's awesome.
I'm considering doing, because I've got a modern VTM book I've been kind of tooling out for a while. Then I started a Dark Ages one, which is where I'm pulling a lot of the Dark Ages stuff I've been throwing at you guys for cons. So I might need to just be like, fuck it, here's a region, make a character. When we play, and that's about that. You know what I mean? Because you can only have so many people necessarily streaming. Otherwise, we're talking all over each other, you know?
Definitely when the pandemic slows down, I'm gonna come visit you guys and we'll play some, hopefully North Shore, Providence, Salem, whatever by night in person.
Oh, hell yeah.
That'll be an exciting day when it happens, when the pandemic ends, whatever that is.
I'll be taking 4 vaccines, dude, whatever it takes.
Several vaccines. I'll be taking all the vaccines.
I'm gonna be like the William Dafoe meme where he's like, we've barely tapped human potential. Yeah.
All right, so enough blabbering from me. Rick, please plug yourself, plug the projects you got going on. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Find me anywhere Gehenna Gaming is, because I am part of that, like a tumor that you just can't get rid of because it's beautiful. Big Dad says, you can find me on OnlyFans, which Marchosius may have made for me. I don't remember, but it's probably a joke if it is. But yeah, I'm Def Malkavian on Twitter. My name is Rick Wheeler. You can find me anywhere. If you want to reach out, ask me any questions, connect with me, please do, because I love this community and I love to talk to all of these fantastic people about the things we love, because that's pretty much why we started Gehenna Gaming. So, yeah, thank you for being part of everything that we like to do, because we like having you.
Damn. My name is Noman Nick on Twitter. You could find me. You could find. Yeah, I was just so like. Find me Noman Nick on Twitter, also on Instagram. Although my Instagram's a little bit more personal, but I still like the followers anyway because I'm a social media whore. But definitely follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to break it to 100. You know, I'm still a young lad in that. It would be great. Yeah, man, I need some more.
I need to help you out there, bud.
That's what I'm saying. Come on.
Just all you gotta do is ask. I don't know why I have an insane amount of Twitter people. It doesn't make sense to me, but I will retweet and tell people to follow. Call y'all wonderful people.
Start shitposting. Yeah.
Start shitposting.
Yeah, really. That's
what the Temple of Set account that Big Dad asks for, which I am shamelessly part of.
Is it shitposting or is it set posting?
It's mostly set posting, but there's not a big difference. That's not me. Yeah, that's a bunch of baloney.
Well, you can check me on a lot of shows coming through, a lot of projects coming through. But in the meantime, I'm a stream producer for Gehenna Gaming. You can check out the Trapped in the Magnus Institute, which is going to be happening on Halloween night at 8 p.m. EDT with an awesome cast. As I said before, but I'll say it again: Jacob Burgess, Ellie Collins, Cynthia Marie, and Alexander Ward. And based on the Rusty Quills, the Magnus Archives, a great podcast series, which I have not yet listened to, and I feel like I really should get on it, but I will. But Ian fucking loves it, and Ian's gonna be running it, and he's passionate about it, and we're all passionate about the stuff we do here. You know, Bran, who I don't know if he's in the chat anymore, but Worlds and Craft, passionate. He's like such a chill guy. Gehenna Valley, they put a lot of work into it. Brother West from Iron City by Night, which we'll be hosting on Sundays, also puts a shit ton of work into all this stuff, and you should just give them all over. We're all a big community here, and we all raise each other up. But the vampire days aren't over yet. You'll see us back probably 2 weeks time, maybe a week if I can beat it out of Ian enough. Let's see. But thank you everyone for tuning into the Deep Dive, the show for Game Masters by Game Masters. I have enjoyed you immensely, and you all have yourselves a good night. Thanks for watching.
Indeed.
Bye, everyone.